In Sector 509, some dirty kids are running around back and forth. One of them stands up and notices that the golem is coming. The kid walks up and tells the golem he'll trade this lantern for food. Nobody knows where that golem came from or who owns it, but what matters is that if you hand it trash, usually it gives you food in return. This time, though, after staring at the boy, the golem just keeps walking. The kid starts yelling, demanding to know why today it won't take the lantern when yesterday it did. As you can tell, it's not always guaranteed that the golem will give you food depending on what you hand over. The kid keeps cursing, but his friend warns him to be careful. Some golems might fight back and actually kill people. Meanwhile, there's this kid with white hair full of swagger who's like 99.9% sure to be the protagonist. He jumps forward, gets in front of the golem, and hands over a whole bag stuffed with lanterns, screws, and other random junk. The golem stares for a moment, grabs the bag, consumes everything, and while the rest of the survivors are mad, still wondering where the hell this kid keeps finding so much stuff, the golem starts spitting out a bunch of drinks, canned food, even hamburgers. The kids complain that it doesn't make sense. How does he always manage to score so much? Seeing that he's stacked with enough food for about 3 days, one of them suggests that the guy must be clever, and maybe they should just take it from him. But another quickly shuts him down, saying no way, they're not messing with the coast of 17th Street. A scene then cuts to Sector 50, where the protagonist is walking while someone tails him. He notices it's 7 people, stops, and tells them to show themselves already, asking how long they plan on following him. For an apocalyptic world, this kid's pretty well fed, and one of them says Ray's senses, as always, are sharp. But he just turns around and warns Ron that he already made it clear last time. If they show up in front of him again, nobody's walking away. Ron never learned the rule about not messing with the white-haired character. He's itching for a fight and tells the kid to drop his backpack, saying that if he obeys, he'll walk away just fine. But Ray answers that he knows he's lying. The story shifts to a legend the kids in that place tell, the ghost of 17th Street. A boy with no expression who walks silently. Anyone who stared into his eyes would have their lies exposed. Ron loses it and goes in for a punch, yelling that Ray has always been an arrogant kid. Now it's time he learned to never act that way again. But Ray dodges with ease, taps his foot lightly, grabs the thing near him, and slams a hit into the guy's stomach. The first victim drops to the ground while the rest try to muster up some courage and charge, shouting to kill him. One of them swings, but Ray ducks and smashes an elbow straight into his mouth. The poor guy spits out what looks like 5 liters of blood. Before his buddy can react, Ray already kicks the other in the face. He glares to the side, and the whole street erupts in screams. A while later, Ray says he already made it clear that bringing more people wouldn't help at all. He steps closer to Ron, who's desperate, shouting that Ray is a monster and ordering him not to come near. But Ray reminds him that he'd already said he wouldn't be able to walk anymore after pulling something like this. At that moment, Ron whips out a little knife, warning Ray to stay back or he'll die. Seeing that, Ray thinks maybe being called a monster isn't so far off. When he was around 10 years old, he realized he was different from everyone else. With his knee cut open, people asked why he wasn't crying. Honestly, I don't think I'd cry from that either. Maybe I'm a little genius too. Another kid asked why he wasn't angry at the boy who had beaten up their friend. The protagonist didn't understand why he should feel anger. Then, when that friend ended up dead and he still didn't care, well, that's when things really looked peculiar. From then on, the other kids started seeing him as strange and kept their distance. That's when he realized he didn't feel what people called emotions. He didn't know if that was wrong, but he wanted to be like everyone else. He wondered if one day he'd never learn what emotions really were. 6 years passed since then, and he still didn't feel anything. But strangely, he knew how to read other people's emotions. He tells Ron that not using any kind of blade is an unspoken rule here. So either Ron had brought it from the start because he planned to attack, or he was lying. Ron insists he found it in the trash earlier, but Ray can clearly see that's a lie. Through the energy concentrated in his chest, Ray saw things nobody else could. Certain emotions carried a color of mana. Anger and love were red mana. Apathy was blue. Excitement and joy shone yellow. There are countless colors, and his world is overflowing with them all. Ron screams at him not to come closer or he'll really die. But seeing the heavy concentration of black, Ray knows the guy is drowning in fear. He keeps walking forward while Ron, trembling, orders him to stay put, backing up until he slams into a wall. That's when the protagonist declares that a liar like him deserves punishment, a promising protagonist already farming aura in the very first chapter. Looks like the kid got his beating, and now Ray's heading back under the bridge. He remembers Pale, that green-eyed boy who leads the bridge kids. Everyone rushes to him, thrilled, calling out that big brother Ray has returned. Turns out he's even got some friends. I really thought he was just another lonely kid. They squeeze together in a cramped half-square-meter hideout, and he tells everyone to put in the middle whatever they managed to gather today. The other kids, who aren't the main characters, poor things, barely brought anything at all. And Pale has no idea how he's supposed to split that up between 7 people. But just like any protagonist in an apocalyptic story, our boy's got that stacked inventory. Everyone's excited, saying for sure he must have scored a lot again from the golem. Truth is, nobody knows that what the golem really wants are items with mana residue. And if you can't see it, it's hard to get it right. So Pale says they can share, and thanks to Ray. No one's going hungry tonight. Man, I hope this guy's decent. Don't betray our protagonist and leave him cold, emotionless, wanting to kill you. Although Ray can see feelings, right? If Pale was a traitor, he'd notice. The kids are all happily eating while Ray heads back toward the bridge, thinking there's never enough for everyone. Maybe he should hit the warehouse. He feels it's his duty to support the group because he owes them his life. A year ago, he was dozing off in the snow when these kids found him and dragged him out. The boy was so depressed he figured dying there was fine, but the youngest one among them wouldn't accept that and insisted on helping him. The only principle Ray carries in life is that debts must be paid, whether as a favor or even as vengeance. That's when Pale shows up and says Ray needs to take his share too. Ray just says he's fine, not hungry, but then his stomach growls, giving him away. His friend immediately breaks a bar in half and hands it over. Today, black rain is falling. They say it happens when certain people burn through massive amounts of magic. They're in Sector 50, and the word is that high-level mages live down in the lower sectors. Pale insists this golem must be something sent by one of them. The protagonist figures it's just some machine, but Pale is sure it's magic keeping the thing walking. Oddly, he's emotional about it. I don't know why, but Ray agrees. That's because he can actually see that wherever the golem goes, it absorbs mana around it. The mana swirls at its core and releases black smoke. There's black smoke, then there's black rain. He isn't sure if they're really connected. But right now, there's something more important. He gets up, saying he's heading out. His friend starts to warn him not to go out into the black rain, but the protagonist ignores it and runs off. When it rains, the streets are always empty because people believe a single drop of black rain can make you sick. But Ray can generate this aura around himself, making it a lot easier to work when there's no one else outside. On 18th Street sits Hector Manco's warehouse. Inside, guys are playing poker, bragging about betting it all, while Ray listens from outside. They always do this when it rains, and now it's their turn. Inside the warehouse, mana of countless types fills the air. Ray draws a red one and manages to spark a flame in his hand. He doesn't really know why, but this was the hardest color to control. It makes him wonder if by truly understanding the emotion tied to that mana, he could create a stronger fire. But then a knife comes flying and he barely dodges it. He hides immediately. Someone sneers that the little rat is here to steal their rations again. And worst of all, these guys are armed and even wearing night vision goggles. Ray knows with 3 against 1, all of them tracking his position, he's screwed. He definitely didn't expect those bastards to have night vision. They throw 3 more knives and Ray gives them a hard glare, then slips down the corridor, dodging everyone. The guy can't believe it, but mutters that the kid's an idiot for charging straight at him, right before Ray plants a punch square into his jaw. The other 2 can't figure out how they're being seen in the dark. But of course, Ray's not looking at them. He's reading their emotions. One of them was overflowing with rage, the other with surprise. The guy swings his arm up and hurls another knife. But the mana vessel doesn't just show emotion, it also lets Ray see where the next move is headed. He dodges, leaps, and lands a kick straight to the other's neck. The guy sputters that it's impossible, but Ray steps in, slams a punch into his stomach, and tells him it's not. With that, all 3 men are knocked out cold. But then another barges in, kicking the door open, saying he had to come see what the hell all that noise was. This one's an executive of the warehouse known as Humphrey, who says all his brothers have fallen. So now he'll have to deal with this little rat. The bastard is just as intimidating as the rumors said. For Ray, the plan now is simple. Get out of here. He charges, lands a punch to the chest, but the man doesn't budge a single inch. In an instant, Humphrey counters with a heavy swing, forcing Ray to dodge, barely managing to step back. At least he tested him. He realizes the guy is fast and he retreats. Humphrey actually praises him, while Ray knows this opponent is on a completely different level. Humphrey comes again with another punch and Ray dodges sideways. But no matter how much he can slip away, instinct tells him there's no way to fight this guy head on. That's why he crouches low, sidesteps, plots a weak point, focuses fire mana in his hand, and slams a palm strike to the chest. Humphrey is shoved back, and by the time he opens his eyes, the boy has vanished. But the entire sector is screaming that the kid was just there, so he couldn't have gotten far. And they're right. He's crouched behind his shack, just like me camping in Call of Duty. Just as they're about to close in, someone yells there's something near the entrance. They all turn and Ray slips the other way. Robbing Hector's infamous warehouse was insane, and he knows if they catch him, they'll kill him. He's not afraid of death. The problem is, if he disappears, where are those kids going to get food? He wouldn't be able to pay back the debt he owes. Then another comes up behind, saying he's found him, forcing Ray to run again. Eventually, he slams into a dead end. The men order the kid to stop trying to escape and just hand over everything he stole or he'll leave with a hole in his stomach. Realizing Humphrey isn't there, Ray focuses mana into his arm, knowing he can handle these ones. The first rushes in, but Ray steps aside, pushes his arm away, and cracks him in the jaw. At that same moment, another charges with a knife, but Ray is already setting fire to the man's arm. And right then, damn, the kid pulls in lightning just like Killua and blasts it out like Sasuke's Chidori right into the guy's mouth. Holy hell, this boy really has every element, doesn't he? But even so, he admits he's screwed. There are way more enemies than the mana he's got. He can't use it endlessly, so he'll have to disappear from here. Looks like he ditches the dump while the men run past. As the footsteps fade away, he decides it's best to spend the night there so they don't follow him back to his hideout. He enjoys a surprisingly nice sleep on a comfy bed, and the next morning sunlight wakes him. He steps out, saying there's nobody around, when suddenly someone shouts that they found him. Turning to the side, there's a man with a knife saying he knew the kid would show up again. Ray sees that this guy is burning with fury. But wait, is our boy still not recovered? One whole night's rest and he hasn't bounced back. How the hell is he supposed to handle this? Ray pulls out his little knife too, and the guy grins, saying it's going to be a true duel of blades, a fight between real men. He charges, declaring that since it's come to this, he doesn't need to hold back, he can kill the boy outright. But Ray, as always, dodges with ease by reading the flow of mana, and when the guy glances to the side, trying to slash at him, Ray slips back once again. The problem is that sudden dodge throws him off balance, and now the man says goodbye to the kid, stabbing straight for his eye. But then a gunshot echoes through the junkyard. The man bleeds out and drops dead. A guy holding a pistol tells Ray that was pretty dangerous. He lights a cigarette and asks why Ray is causing trouble so early in the morning. This is Niles, the boss of 17th Street, the one with the American magic. He steps closer and Ray immediately asks if someone called for him. Normally, he wouldn't even be awake at this hour. Niles says yeah, he heard Hector's guys are making a mess. Then he notices Ray's coat and asks what that is. Did he take it from the warehouse? Bold move for a kid. Ray thanks him, but Niles quickly snaps that it wasn't a compliment. For Ray, people like Niles were the hardest to deal with. His emotions were so flat and monotone it was nearly impossible to read what he was really thinking or how he might act. Niles warns that if Ray keeps this up, he's going to get himself killed. He can't just go around attacking everyone. Ray answers that it doesn't matter, it's either that or starving to death. Niles then says he's already paid his debt for saving Ray, and Ray replies that he already paid him back for that too. We see what he means. A year ago, Ray pulled Niles, unconscious, out of the river. Apparently, Niles had been an executive in Sector 46, but was betrayed and executed. Ray doesn't believe he lied about it. In return, Niles taught him how to fight. Now Ray asks about that organization he'd once mentioned. He wants to join Niles. Ray's plan is to do it to protect the children. But suddenly, Niles leans against the wall, cigarette burning low, and says he knows Ray can use magic. That makes the boy suspicious, so this was supposed to be a secret. Niles figures it all makes sense now, while Ray himself wants to know more about magic. He really doesn't understand how it works. Niles explains that what he knows comes from a mage in his old organization. The guy used to say mana is in the air and he focused it to use power, but very few people can even sense it. Ray asks if the mage ever said anything about colors of mana, but Niles says no. He couldn't see it. To him, it was more like a feeling. That's when Ray realizes he's the only one who can actually see mana in the air. Niles suddenly steps in close, asking if Ray's looking to get hit. He swings, but the boy dodges again. A little later, Niles stands calmly at his side, waiting for his answer. Ray still wants in, but Niles just says no. Ray doesn't understand, but it seems Niles doesn't want the kids stuck in this place, because the closer you move toward the lower numbered sectors, the better life gets. To him, it'd be a waste for a child like Ray to stay here, making allies and growing stronger in such a dump. Niles tells him to leave Sector 50. If he wants, he can get him a car. But Ray refuses. He's taking care of the kids here. Niles then says not to worry, he was planning to start an orphanage anyway to take care of troublemakers like Ray around this place. Once more, Ray tries to read his emotions, but they're so faint it's impossible to tell if he's lying or not. Still, at least Niles was someone who always kept his word. Then the protagonist mentions it looked like Hector was preparing for war. He'd seen countless trucks full of weapons rolling into the sector. Niles says he already knows. In these parts, using weapons of any kind is basically a declaration of war. And the worst part is, Niles' crew is one of the few that charges a low tax. Which means if others take over, survival's going to get a lot harder for everyone. Niles tells our protagonist to stop thinking of him as some old gang boss, but the boy shoots back that he definitely is. Niles swings a punch, but Ray dodges. At that exact moment, a car pulls up and someone inside tells the boss they need to go. Sliding into the car, Niles warns Ray that this place is about to turn into a war zone, so he better hide. He tosses something his way, and when Ray looks, it seems to be some kind of medicine. Ray just mutters for him to clean out his ears. The car drives off, leaving Ray standing there, not really understanding much. We cut to 17th Street, Central Square. The protagonist approaches a boy who lights up, asking why he didn't come back yesterday and why he looks so beat up. Ray says it's nothing, just that he's carrying too much. He notices how amazing it is that a single person can feel so many emotions all at once. He hands over some cans and tells the kid to get back to the tent since Pale will show up soon. Once the boy leaves, Ray asks if she told Josephine anything. The blind woman Viola, the storyteller of this street, says she was just telling the boy about rainbows. Ray tells her to stop with that talk, otherwise they won't get used to surviving on the streets if they're dreaming about things like that. He also notices that Viola is the only person he's ever seen with purple mana. He warns her it's better to move somewhere else because a war is about to break out here, and walks away while she thinks to herself that he truly was a kind child. The next morning, he knocks on a door announcing that the delivery has arrived. A man answers, asking why it's Ray instead of Ron. Ray thinks to himself about that poor guy who had both legs broken. He tells the man he should evacuate. He won't have any customers once the war starts. But the man just says he doesn't have anywhere else to go. The shop is all he's got. Besides, maybe the war won't even happen. Ray asks why. The man explains that Niles and Hector are having a little chat right now. Just then, the door opens and members of Hector's gang walk out. The man with the scar on his face is Hector himself. Spotting the kid, he immediately wants to know why there's a child working there. He compliments the boy's hard work, saying that's how you survive in this world. He tosses a few coins into Ray's hand and tells him to buy something to get by. With that, he waves goodbye and moves on with his crew. But the bald guy nearly notices the wound on Ray's ear, which he quickly hides under his hood. Obviously, it's the same guy from the fight earlier, right? Can't let him figure it out. Since it's dark, the man struggles to recognize him and Hector calls for him to hurry up, so they leave. But Ray is certain the man recognized him, so why didn't he say anything? Then the shopkeeper bolts inside and asks Niles what happened. Niles answers that the negotiations failed. War was coming. The man asks why, and Niles says he couldn't accept their offer of absorbing his organization. That was the worst possible choice. He only warns Ray not to leave his hideout in the meantime. And with that white hair and those huge pale eyes, how has no one recognized him? He knows that once the war breaks out, he won't have the freedom to move around. He needs to stockpile enough food before it starts. That's when Humphrey's car suddenly passes in front of him. He had never seen a car like that in Sector 50, which was suspicious as hell. He decides to investigate, following the men as they bow and greet someone. Hector steps out, opens a door, and welcomes the mage. Ray has no clue who this man is, but he carries an overwhelming amount of deep blue mana. the very same color he's seen in the golems when they move. But this guy, strangely, had several kinds of rings surrounding his mana vessel. And around those rings, there was another type of mana that seemed to be blocking the flow from escaping the center. Ray knew that man was dangerous, and he needed to tell Niles about it. War was brewing. Supplies were piling up. Right then, the protagonist shows up and calls for Niles, startling the man who wonders how this kid appeared out of nowhere. He tells Ray to disappear. His boss is preparing for war, and things are about to get dangerous. Ray just says to pass along a message. Be careful with the guy with the monocle. He can't mention mana, of course. He doesn't want to expose his own talents, because that would put him in danger too. Back under the bridge, the children are all asleep and Pale shows up. Ray wants to know if they'll be staying there through the whole week of war. Pale says yes and asks who he thinks will win. Ray has no idea. To him, both groups are evenly matched, which is a problem since Niles is the one protecting the kids in this city. If Hector wins this war, instantly everyone here will be sold into slavery. At that moment, they hear something and Pale says the war must have already started. Ray stands up, thinking something feels off, something's wrong. On 17th Street, the war is raging freely, but against the golem, nothing works. Worse this time, the thing is gathering mana and firing off bazooka-like blasts of energy that pierce soldiers clean through. A poor soldier stares in horror, wondering what kind of hell this is right before the golem tears his head off. Damn, brutal little golem, completely insane. The man with the monocle is there sneering that these places stink. Then he boasts that this creation of his is magnificent and orders it to wipe everything out. Back with Pale, he wonders what those sounds are and tells Ray not to go, saying things feel strange this time. If Ray goes, they'll all go with him. But Ray insists no, Pale should stay there. Then another child wakes up, asking what's happening. Pale gently strokes the boy's head and tells him to go back to sleep, that it'll all pass soon. He then tells Ray fine, he'll watch over the children, since they can't be left alone. But Ray must not go too far, just come back once he finds out what's going on. And honestly, it feels like a wife sending her husband off to war. That husband, now standing in the middle of flames, watches as the city has been ripped apart. Soldiers lie riddled with bullets, dead on the ground. He finds the red-haired man and asks what happened. The man stirs, telling Ray they brought a golem. Looks like the monocle guy managed to control it, and despite having nothing left from the waist down, he's still talking. He tells Ray not to throw himself into this war, that it's better for him to run away. Then he faints. Ray covers his mouth and mutters for him to stay quiet because the protagonist will handle things. A lie. He only means Niles' group is doomed, so he has to lend a hand. At the same time, back under the bridge, the children are all dead. My god, what just happened? Pale is holding one of them while the golem blasts a raisin gem straight into his mouth. Why? The poor kid is about to be sent off to the afterlife, begging Ray not to return. And all of this just so our protagonist has the reason he needs to move up to the next street, the author. Now the boy is standing there seeing clearly that he came too late. Bodies everywhere, each missing pieces. I didn't think this story would be this violent. It's downright brutal. Then an explosion erupts behind Ray. He spins, rushing toward the spot, remembering that's where the tent was. And sure enough, he arrives just in time to see the kids hit by a mana bazooka. When the smoke clears, all that's left is rubble and blood. And that's it. Our boy is about to launch straight into the evolution arc, throwing himself at the golem, but he doesn't stand a chance. The golem notices him instantly, turns like the machine it is, and slams a boulder into his stomach, smashing the kid against the wall. Damn, you better run. This golem rips people apart. But Ray is whispering to himself that he has to make sure everyone's okay. And then come the flashes of memory. Everyone smiling, calling him Big Brother, saying they like him, waving goodbye. Pale's expression changes, saying he never wanted Ray to come back. And yeah, of course, everyone's lying dead on the ground. Lohane and Layla wake up. Now you tell them their names. Now that everyone's already down, the protagonist stands there, fists clenched, saying he still hasn't paid them back for everything they did for him. But then they hear a sound nearby and another dark Rasengan is being charged up. Ray is certain the golem is the one who killed them all. The children under the bridge, Niles' entire crew. And he swears he'll avenge them. Not sure how though, because that giant golem is right there charging a final attack that won't leave even his feet behind to tell the tale. Then, out of nowhere, modernity wins. Someone rams a car straight into the golem, sending it flying. Niles steps out of the car, calls Ray's name, and runs to help him. Pretty clear he's about to die too, right? He asked about the children, and Ray just says it's over. Niles looks to the side and sees the carnage. He apologizes, saying it's because he was too late, but the protagonist answers that it's not his fault. And then suddenly, they hug, like some tragic romance scene under the rain. Looks like the car really did kill the golem. Shut it down completely. Where's that beast now? The two of them hide out, and Ray asks about the subordinates. Niles answers that obviously they're all dead. Hector brought in a mage from another region. Ray wants to know what they're going to do. Niles says they'll head back to the street and look for other survivors. And right there, damn, I jinxed it myself. Asked about the golem, said he was going to die, and of course, they end up in the same frame. Good job, me. But honestly, why were they standing around talking right next to the golem? Disaster. And sure enough, the bastard goes down with a smug grin, making Ray faint. Ray comes to, asking what just happened. Turns out that Rasengan Blast caught him. He remembers every moment with Niles, and his heart starts glowing red. The boy unleashes that aura, and the golem swings again while Ray swears he'll kill them all. Nobody's left in the story we knew. Just the protagonist, telling himself that if this is a dream, he wants to wake up now. The golem stretches its hand once more, but now it's Ray's turn. He's forming that blazing fireball. The monster keeps charging its Rasengan, while Ray builds a red vortex. The two energies collide, exploding everywhere, as the protagonist swears he's different from the golem. He's human with emotions, and then comes the massive blaze. What the hell? he disintegrates the beast. That's firepower. But here's the problem, he can only use his powers when he's emotional. He has to almost die just to get strong. He shouts, "Niles, don't die." But the man's chest is a crater. Even so, he slaps Ray's hand away, telling the brat to stop irritating him. From the start, he knew he wouldn't die peacefully, though he didn't think it would be today. Even so, Niles had no regrets. He had achieved a lot for someone who started at the very bottom. The only uncertainty he carried was whether, if he'd started earlier, he could have gone further. For him, Ray's age was the perfect time. In that moment, Ray reaches for the medicine in his pocket, but Niles grabs his arm and says he needs to get out of there first. He had to leave that place and go somewhere better, since Niles had always seen him as a younger brother. Go upstream, not stay trapped in those sectors. Niles was sure that if Ray did that, he could make it. And at that moment, he let go, handed the boy the keys, and died. The protagonist just stood there, staring in disbelief. Hatred and despair, those were the first two emotions he had ever truly felt in his life. The next day, he's still under the bridge near where everyone died. He should have left already. This place is grim. He wakes up feeling the same pain as before, wondering if all of it might have been just a dream. But the moment he remembers what happened, his emotions twist and scatter inside him. Still, this time he feels something new, and he's sure of it. The stronger his rage, the stronger the fire magic he can summon. There's a direct connection between the intensity of his emotions and the strength of his magic. The problem is he went overboard. Now he's completely drained. He covers the bodies of everyone and vows to take revenge, whether in a noble way or a cruel one. Back on 17th Street, Niles' men are ordering everyone to move the corpses. The citizens knew now that since the enemy had won, life was about to get much harder, and Ray is already watching Hector preparing to kill someone. Mana concentrated in his hand when suddenly, a hand clamps onto Ray's shoulder. He spins, slashing, nearly cutting Humphrey's neck. The bald man tells him to calm down, but Ray's running hot and lunges again, unleashing a flurry of cuts. Humphrey can't make sense of those lightning-fast movements. The boy is far stronger than before, and at this pace, Humphrey is losing. Ray drives a blade into his shoulder, but then Humphrey simply grabs him by the collar, slams him into the ground, and says he shouldn't be stupid enough to die over something as trivial as revenge, because he has a proposal for the ghost of 17th Street. Ray lies still on the ground, silent. After a while, Humphrey says he's been watching the boy for some time and has something to ask him. Ray remembers Humphrey's reputation, a man known for silence, someone who finished every job perfectly without saying much. Seeing him now with this kind of expression makes Ray think he isn't trying to deceive him. Ray asks what it is. Humphrey says he also wants Ray to leave Sector 50. Ray asks why, and Humphrey explains he's searching for his brother, someone Hector sold to the City of Mages a long time ago. The deal was that if Humphrey worked for Hector for 10 years, Hector would give his brother back. But now he's starting to doubt Hector's honesty. He says the boy is about Ray's age. Ray asks why he should even accept this request. Humphrey immediately asks if Ray knows how to use magic. He's sure of it after that warehouse fight. It's an incredible talent Ray shouldn't waste, because right now he can't defeat Hector. Hector always keeps a terrifying mage at his side. When Humphrey says this, Ray sees fear flare up in his emotions, and that's how he knows the man is telling the truth. Humphrey explains that anyone who pushes that mage's patience ends up frozen solid or drowned in a bubble of water. He's unbelievably cruel, and at the same time, unbelievably strong. Humphrey warns that the boy needs to disappear, survive, and only later think of revenge. The truth becomes clearer to Ray. The only magic he knows how to use is based on pure instinct, while the enemy he's up against is an expert he'd have no chance against. Humphrey tells him that by following the Elton River upstream, he'll eventually reach the City of Mages. It said only mages can enter. Then Humphrey hands him the money he'd saved through most of his life. Inside it, there's also a paper with his brother's name and description. Ray can't understand why Humphrey is handing him money and everything else if there's a chance he won't even keep the promise. But Humphrey says he's been watching the boy for a while and knows he never breaks his word. On top of that, he's certain Ray has enough skill to climb up into higher sectors. Suddenly, he grabs Ray by the shoulder and tells him he has to decide quickly before the other members see. The protagonist takes the money and says fine, but Humphrey has to take care of the bodies under the bridge. Humphrey answers that of course he will, and with that, Ray leaves, saying one day he'll be back. And sure enough, he runs like hell, exhausted but lucky no one followed. That's when he sees Viola again. He tosses her a coin and says he has a question. He doesn't have much time, so it has to be quick. She asks what it is, and he asks if it's true that if you find a rainbow, you can make a wish. He remembers one of the kids who heard this story from her said that sometimes a rainbow appears with countless colors that actually reach the ground. If you find that spot, you can make a wish. The protagonist thinks it sounds strange, but the boy kept insisting he had to believe it was real because he heard it from Viola, who swore it wasn't a lie. The woman then says it's true they exist, but whether you can really make a wish or not, that's another matter. Ray notices that, as always, there isn't a tremor in her mana. It's always purple, and he can't tell if she's lying or if it's something else entirely. Still, he grows curious, because Humphrey had said that Mage who showed up was also searching for a rainbow. With her saying this too, Ray is sure that wherever it can be found, it must be valuable. He then asks if finding a rainbow could bring back the dead. She shrugs it off, who knows? They say any wish could come true. The problem is no one knows where to find one. It's as if they're infinitely far away. Protagonist, just a warning, I've watched Fullmetal Alchemist. You can't revive the dead. Don't go down that road. The boy thanks her and takes off running. Now he's at 23rd Street, Sector 50. The place Niles had marked on the paper is right there, with the car parked out front. Just as he's about to get into the old man's car, someone shows up. It's that same guy from before, demanding to know where Niles is and if Ray was ordered to take the car. Ray doesn't have time. He knows this area is crawling with Hector's men, so he grabs the handle and climbs into the car, but the guy sprints over and grabs the door. Ray struggles, drained from using too much mana earlier, but now he doesn't hesitate. He pulls the trigger. Bam, right in the forehead. Damn, that was badass. He floors it and speeds off. Now he's leaving Sector 50, heading upstream. But he stops in what looks like a dump. He checks the trunk. Damn, Niles stocked a whole month's worth of supplies. But Ray says he won't reach the next sector for days. What? They're that far apart? Even at full speed, it'll take forever. First, he needs to find more information about magic in the next sector. At this point, what he knows is that there are two types of mana. Red mana, which can be used without preparation, and other types that require combining different colors to function together. Mana, obviously, isn't easy to manipulate, but he's able to focus on certain emotions and channel them more easily. He thinks of his dead friends to focus his rage, but the mana fizzles away. That's still his limit. 1 second of lost concentration and everything collapses. So he decides to try combining the manas available in the air. He pulls in a large amount and tries to form a sphere, but it too unravels. The problem with mixing those things is that certain emotions and colors repel each other, so if one touches the other, everything collapses. He has to concentrate hard to make it work. On the other hand, there are combinations that always succeed, so he needs to study them gradually. Before, survival was the only priority. He needed food, but now things have changed. Now he has a reason to learn all of this. The next morning, he speeds up the car, stops to drink some water, and trains a little more with mana at night. He practices with a bit of cold mana, tries out a small flame, and even manages some stone formations. Already exhausted, he decides it's time to stop, wondering if there's a gentler way to draw mana without draining so much from the surroundings. It would be much easier if he could store mana inside himself and use it whenever he wanted, just like that guy with those strange rings around his mana core. Either way, he decides to focus on figuring that out once he reaches Sector 49. Meanwhile, back in Sector 50, everyone is rushing around searching for something. The monocle man asks if they found it, but someone says unfortunately not. They've searched everywhere, but the golem vanished. When they insist they'll keep looking, he suddenly points something at the man's head. At first I thought it was a gun, but no. He says, "Take my cane." The man touches it, and instantly his whole hand freezes along with the rest of him. Why the hell would you touch it? Should have just run, and then shattered to pieces. That's it, broken apart completely. At least try escaping. The villain still mutters that he's useless, and honestly, he's right. Then they find an area completely destroyed, and one of them brings what looks like a fragment of the golem. The monocle man notices there's mana lingering in the air, meaning someone cast magic strong enough to leave behind that kind of trace. He follows the trail, sensing the mana pooling in a corner, and asks who used to live there. Someone explains it was the orphans and street kids. He's surprised, saying they must have been hiding there to avoid the war. But he refuses to believe some random orphan could have used a spell like that. Suddenly, he starts ranting, wondering how anyone could comprehend one of the countless, endless magical combinations that exist in the world. To him, it's impossible. So he concludes another mage must have come from a different region to destroy the golem. His men are ordered to find the intruder, while he himself will keep watch in case such a person really exists. Because if an orphan managed to do this, he could become an archmage the world has never seen. Meanwhile, Ray arrives in Sector 49. We see a flashback of a conversation with Niles, who once said that Sector 42 looked much the same. The big difference was that the streets were wider and the buildings taller. Beyond that, everything was similar. You had to descend much further into the sectors before seeing a dramatic change. Now Ray stands at the entrance of 49, realizing the place really is massive. Walking through, he sees kids scavenging trash and wonders where the golems are, or if they only exist back in 50. He strolls through the city, hearing people talk about mining, cooking, and drinking. He notices he's on 36th Street, which seems to mean this place has twice as many streets. Right now, the important thing is to gather information about magic, especially about the mana vessel and those rings he saw. Of course, he also needs to learn about prism colors and, hardest of all, figure out how to get some money. He still has what Humphrey gave him, but he doesn't know how long this journey will last. And at that moment, he comes face to face with Veronica's bookstore. But Ray has no idea what a bookstore even is. In the past, we see that it was Niles who taught him how to speak and write, but only in the most basic, rough way. He knows enough to communicate, but bookstore is way beyond what the boy can grasp. He steps inside and realizes the place is full of squares with letters inside them. Then suddenly, a girl appears from an upstairs window, shouting that the bastard breaking things to steal books is back again. She tells him to get out right now and demands to know why he's robbing. Ray only understands that whatever's being stored here, it must be this thing called a book. While she keeps yelling, saying she won't repeat herself, he notices her aura shifting. Red for excitement, yellow for joy, then discomfort, irritation, and anger. He wonders how it's even possible for someone to feel all that at once. The girl warns him to move aside because the adults are coming down and they'll finish him off. He just replies that she's weird. That only makes her angrier, and she snaps that her grandfather will deal with him soon enough. Ray decides to ignore the crazy girl and keeps walking through the city. As usual, there are eyes on him. He notices those people are watching carefully, cautious. Obviously, he's a stranger in these streets and drawing attention, so he knows it's best not to provoke anyone. After all, this place isn't much different from Sector 50. Back at the card, he spent the whole day wandering through the city but hasn't learned a single thing about magic. Tomorrow, they'll have to search in other areas. Just then, he hears something strange. The guys nearby are preparing for something, and Ray already guesses what's about to happen. This time, there are 4 of them, leaning against the car. The one in the blue hood asks if they should kill him. Another says no, or the kid will scream, while another insists they need the key. They decide it's time to act when suddenly something smashes through the window and slams one of them in the face. He falls on his back, everyone's confused, and Ray jumps out of the car. When another tries to react, Ray drives a strike straight into his chest. One more drops to the ground. The last one tries to attack from behind, swinging, but what the hell? Ray calmly catches it with his hand and tosses it aside. Somehow, he's spinning the guy by the collar and beating him down. By the end of it, they're all sprawled out. Ray asks how many streets they control in this area. One of them hesitates, almost gets his ear torn off, then blurts that they control 3. Ray demands which ones. The man says 25 and 23, but Ray sees his nervousness, uncertainty, and fear and knows he's lying. He stomps on the man's hand and orders him to tell the truth or he'll get beaten too. Brutal. Blood splatters everywhere as he turns to the next guy, telling him it's his turn to answer. That one, clearly panicking, spills that they control 14 streets with 52 members total. Their leader is someone named Kendrick, and their base is in the middle of an abandoned place. Ray tells him to lift his head, asks his name, and he answers Neshu. The boy then wants to know what orders their leader gave. Neshu explains the order was to beat Ray nearly to death, then steal his food and anything else he had, and that Kendrick himself would be watching. Right then, Kendrick leaps from atop the car, aiming to stab Ray, but Ray responds that he already knew someone was observing him. A wind spreads around him, the man doesn't understand, and Ray slams him twice, in the face and chest. The guy crashes to the ground. Ray leans over and orders him to warn his leader that he's not the only one watching everything. Later, back on the streets, Ray realizes that just like in Sector 50, in 49 almost nobody knows anything about magic. He's also figured out that this thing called a book is just pages of paper with information written on them. And considering that's exactly what he needs most, maybe this bookstore really is worth it. It's right then that 3 guys show up in front of him and tell him to come with them. They're not there to fight, so he can relax. Ray just asks if they're friends of those kids from yesterday, and they say yes. He beat 3 of their members nearly to death, which is why the boss seems interested in him. Looks like the kid can really fight. One of them pulls out a sheet of paper and says there's a message, but none of the 3 can read, so they're stuck figuring out how to deliver it. Ray snatches it from their hand, and they're shocked that he can actually read. Street kids aren't supposed to know that. The note invites Ray to work for their boss, promising he'd never go hungry again. The trio asks what it says, but Ray just wants to know how the leader is chosen. They explain it's through fighting. Whoever's strongest becomes the leader. Right away, Ray tells them to take him there. Obviously, he wants to meet this leader, who's definitely getting a beating. They arrive at Kendrick's abandoned factory. One boy in front says just to go inside. They walk through some corridors until they reach the back where a fire burns and a bunch of kids are gathered. The one sitting in the chair stands, saying now he knows who this is. He introduces himself as Kendrick, adding that Ray doesn't look too bad in a fight, but he's still going to get beaten, no doubt. Or maybe not, because for the first time, Ray sees something he's never seen before, mana spilling out of trash. But never in his life has he seen such an absurd amount coming from a single item. Kendrick tells him to sit down, saying he didn't call them here to be an enemy. Still, there are plenty of kids standing around staring. The protagonist notices that for his age, Kendrick is surprisingly skilled at displaying his power. Kendrick asks where Ray came from. He's never seen him on this street, but hears he arrived by car. When Ray enters Sector 50, the whole place gasps. Apparently, no one has ever seen someone come out of that sector alive. Everyone mutters that it's way too far, until the leader orders them to shut up. He then says if Ray's telling the truth, it's incredible. He's qualified to be in this organization. Ray doesn't get what he means, so Kendrick explains they're planning to join a real organization. The plan is to become part of Manhwa Reca, a well-known group from Sector 45. They have an agreement. Once Kendrick's gang reaches 66 members, they'll be allowed in. He asks if Ray isn't interested. This could be the perfect chance to raise his status. Ray replies that it's an interesting story and joining a group wouldn't be bad, but he refuses to work under anyone weaker than him. Kendrick doesn't like that and asks if Ray is implying that he's weaker. Ray shrugs it off, saying that in Sector 50, leaders were chosen by strength, not talk. Immediately, one of the gang members charges to hit Ray, but Kendrick grabs him by the neck and tells him to shut up. He doesn't like being interrupted. At that moment, Ray notices Kendrick seems to be using some kind of strengthening magic, but it's not his own power. It's the ring he's wearing that's radiating mana. Ray watches, unimpressed, as Kendrick beats the boy down. He figures he might actually be able to break that ring. Suddenly, Kendrick drops the kid on the floor and apologizes, saying he just got a little stressed. But Ray notices more than just the boost in strength. The ring also warped Kendrick's emotions. Ray steps forward, telling them to continue this nonsense about him being weaker. He flatly agrees Kendrick is weaker, and in an instant, something slices through the air, nearly hitting his head, as Kendrick orders him to repeat that. He turns to his allies, asking what they think. Terrified, they stammer out that of course he's stronger than this boy. What the protagonist notices is that the ring reacts to Kendrick's emotions, and more than that, it seems Kendrick himself has no idea what the ring is actually doing for him. Kendrick cracks his neck and says, fine. If the kid wants to see his strength, then so be it. Ray answers that yes, they should fight for the leader's position, and if he loses, he'll work under Kendrick. But Kendrick says the fight will happen in a week, when everyone is watching. Ray points out that everyone's already here. Then Kendrick explains he wants the other gangs to be present too, so everyone will know without a doubt who is stronger. Ray agrees, then asks where he got that ring. Kendrick just says he'll find out the day he loses, but unfortunately for him, that day isn't coming. The next morning, Ray is still wondering what that ring is all about when he suddenly feels something approaching and spins, grabbing a stone. One boy demands to know who gave him permission to walk around here. Others show up, saying he must have lost his mind. He shouldn't even dream of wandering through this place. They're about to say more when Ray cuts them off, telling them to shut up and fight already. And soon enough, they're all lying beaten on the ground. Just like in Sector 50, it doesn't matter where he goes, people love to pick fights. Probably because they know he's going to fight Kendrick. But he notices Kendrick's own crew doesn't attack him. That rule doesn't apply to the other gangs though, who don't want some outsider walking around freely. For Ray, it makes no difference. Everything's going according to plan. The more he uses his magic, the stronger it gets. These fights are giving him the experience he needs to cast faster and with less energy. Then speaking into the empty air, he asks how long this person plans on just watching. That's when a boy in a beret steps out, commenting on Ray's gray hair and expressionless face, asking if he's the so-called hunter. Ray finds it odd. This kid looks weaker and smaller than everyone else, yet he walks around confidently. He assumes the boy came to fight and tells him to take off those glasses before they're covered in blood. But the kid tells him to calm down, saying he's not here to fight anyone. And really, how could he fight with such a scrawny body? Ray asks what he wants then. The boy hesitates for a second, then introduces himself as Philip, someone who has an offer for him. Everyone in this story always has an offer for the protagonist to obey. Apparently Ray agrees because Philip starts leading him toward what looks like a dump. Along the way, he mentions that he's heard plenty of rumors about the boy. Everywhere he goes, people are talking about him. Turns out this name, Hunter, is a nickname he earned after beating up half the city. Ray thought people were mistaking him for someone else. When they arrive and Philip opens the door, Ray is stunned. The place is full of people. It's not a dump at all. This is Hotel Philip, and he's the owner. Damn, the kid's a businessman. Ray notes there must be about 100 people inside, but Philip corrects him. It's 186, including those who work outside. The protagonist realizes everyone there has something in common, and Philip asks how he noticed. Ray replies that all of them are people who wouldn't be accepted in other groups. Skinny, weak, the kind who get crushed in any fight. Philip praises his sharp eye, but explains further. Yes, they have some strong fighters, but those ones are busy in the mines. They also have quick people, but they're working with food. Basically, they take on all kinds of jobs. And to keep their group from being harassed, they pay fees to other gangs. Sometimes they need extra workers, and that's how everything runs smoothly. Meanwhile, Philip manages the hotel itself, providing shelter. Ray asks if it was really him who pulled all of this together. Just as Philip is about to explain, someone calls his name. A boy named Jonathan comes running in, saying that restaurant is working perfectly now. Nobody's bullying him anymore. He pays the month's rent, and Philip thanks him. Then Philip grabs a ledger and starts jotting something down, while Ray sneaks a look. Philip snaps that everything has to be recorded right away. Seeing Ray's curiosity, he hands it over for him to check. Inside, Ray finds his own description. Hunter, the boy from Sector 50, along with an extremely well-drawn sketch. It's clearly marked in red, approach with caution. Philip is stunned that Ray can read. He thought the kid would just stare at the book without understanding a thing. Now he's apologizing for having tracked him so closely. Ray hands it back, saying it's fine, it doesn't bother him. A while later, they arrive at the door of a room, and the guard there looks confused, asking who this kid is. They can't just let anyone in. Philip explains this is the hunter everyone's been talking about, and today he's their guest. Inside, Ray sees what looks like a luxury mansion. Damn, the kid's really collecting money. Ray himself isn't sure if Philip's good or bad. Ray says he heard rumors about this place and thought it was all lies. Philip explains the most important thing in business is people's trust. Money can always be earned again, but once you lose your credit on the streets, you can never get it back. Ray cuts in, telling him to get to the point. What's his proposal? Philip is trembling, thinking Ray's kind of intimidating, but he forces himself to push through his fear, because if he wants to profit, he has to. He says again he has a genuine offer. He wants Ray to become his business partner. That's after Ray beats Kendrick and becomes the new leader. In other words, Philip has already assumed Ray will win. As always, Ray analyzes his aura and sees the boy is full of courage. He even asks if Philip doesn't think there's a chance he might lose. Philip admits of course it's possible, but he thinks Ray has a high chance of winning. Ray asks why, and Philip says it's just a hunch. Like Ray, he likes to observe people. After analyzing so many behaviors, he's developed a sharp sense for how things work. He notices the smallest details. For example, every time Ray talks to someone, he strangely looks toward the center of their chest. Philip can't figure out why. Maybe it's some trauma, or maybe Ray just doesn't like looking people in the eyes. Still, he drops the subject. Ray, stubborn as ever, wants to know what other habits Philip has noticed and how many. Philip agrees and explains he's seen that every time Ray turns a corner, he steps first with his right foot, probably preparing to strike with his right fist as well. He's also studied the way Ray fights. Hearing all this, Ray is impressed. This boy figured out so much so quickly. Most people only see him on the surface, scary or cold, and usually that's all they think of him. But it makes sense. Anger and sadness are the only emotions he can feel, and even those he has to force himself to focus on. Maybe Philip, with his sharp observations, could actually help him understand emotions better. Philip goes on, saying Kendrick has the bad habit of getting emotional during fights, while Ray seems to keep analyzing all the way through. That alone makes him different. Right then, Ray accepts the partnership. Philip starts to explain about the offer and payments, but Ray cuts him off, saying he'll be the one to decide that. Philip nods, fine, deal made. But then the protagonist adds a condition. Since Philip clearly has plenty of connections in this place, he needs him to find something for him. To be honest, Sector 49 isn't that great. Sure, it's all garbage heaps around, and yet this one kid is living the good life. 2 days later, our boy is back on the streets, sleeping under the car. At first, I thought it was him tinkering, but no. It's another kid helping him out, saying the car really does prove he came from Sector 50. The thing is busted, worn down. He also compliments Ray for already managing to become friends with Philip. They rarely send someone as skilled as him. Then he asks for some tools and a certain screw, and Ray uses his magic to fetch it. The boy notices how it kind of just dropped to the side and wonders when Ray even brought that out. Ray doesn't answer, just stays quiet. After a while, the kid looks beat. Man, this world is only full of children. It's like Neverland. Kids fixing engines, running hotels, while I'm here old and washed up, doing nothing but making YouTube videos. Maybe I should get a real job. The boy goes on, saying he rigged the part to cool the engine down and warns Ray not to tell anyone, but he used one of the most expensive ones. That's because it was Philip's request, and Philip's seen as everyone's savior. Without him, he'd never have gotten work. Ray notices at the very least this kid is popular. Then the boy pulls out a sheet of paper, saying Philip told him to deliver it. The message was too complicated to memorize, so he put it in writing. He waves goodbye to Hunter and says they'll see each other again. We see that the information Ray asked Philip for was obviously about mages. Philip had said fine, he'd start right away. Ray wanted every detail, and Philip told him to remember who he was dealing with. Now looking at the page, Ray can't believe he gathered all this in just 2 days. The notes mention 2nd Street. A man called Wolf Bakers, 42 years old, seen carrying a heavy backpack with one hand. 8th Street. At Kenny's shop, a man 23 years old. So basically, he's tracking down people who might be mages. At least that's what it looks like. Then Ray spots something worth checking. Out on the street, there's a cook carrying boxes while Ray watches carefully. He's searching for people who have those rings around their hearts. The first man is crossed off the list. The second, when a steel pipe was about to fall on him, suddenly a gust of wind knocked it aside. Strangely, the man didn't even flinch, so everyone suspects he used wind magic or something similar. Ray thinks this one might be worth investigating. But when he reaches a shop, there are guys complaining it's closed. The one on the right says, of course, it gets stoned every day. The other responds they're supposed to keep throwing stones, that's the job. Their pay will double if the place gets put up for sale. Then one of them, holding another rock, says this time they'll smash the upstairs window and force whoever's inside to leave. Just as he's about to throw, the red-haired girl from before appears, ordering them to get lost. She says she heard everything, knows they're throwing stones on purpose, and tells them they'd better disappear. Ray notices she's brimming with courage and anger, but at the same time there's a trace of black mana. She's afraid. The boys taunt her, saying they can tell she's scared. She insists adults will come, right before a rock nearly hits her in the face. One of them mocks her, saying they know perfectly well there's just one old guy there, not a whole crowd ready to deal with them, so she should shut up and leave. He hurls another rock, aiming for her face, but Ray moves to step in, and then the redhead herself raises her hand and uses wind magic, making the rock drop to the ground. Ray has found the mage he was looking for. He slips back into hiding while the boys stand there confused, wondering what just happened. They convince themselves it was their imagination and prepare to throw another stone. Ray, of course, is certain that was magic. The guys jump to the other side, tell her to stop pretending, and throw 2 more rocks. This time, she's clearly out of energy to block them, so it's the protagonist's turn. He does the same thing, only the stones don't just fall to the ground. No, they bounce straight back into the faces of the idiots who threw them. At least he managed to send the magic, though it fizzled out at the end. Looked like it came through his hand. He looks at the girl and says it's been a while since they last saw each other. With that, the 2 bullies get beaten down and tossed into an alley. She thanks him for defending the place. He says it's no problem, but he's here to ask her something. She says the same, and then they both end up asking each other if what they used just now wasn't magic. Realizing they asked the same thing, she tells him to come inside so they can talk. Inside, she introduces herself as Veronica, and he says his name is Ray. She apologizes for yelling at him that first time she thought he was one of the kids throwing rocks. He tells her not to worry about it. All he wanted back then was to take a look at the library. That had been his only intention, but he never imagined he'd actually find a mage here. After sitting down, he asks where she learned magic and if it was her grandfather who taught her. She says yes, of course, since he's a mage. Ray wants to meet the man, and she says fine, he's upstairs. But first, they need to deal with the cut on Ray's face. He insists it's nothing serious, but she does the classic. Puts her hand on his cheek and uses a healing spell. She says it's taken care of, but Ray wants to know how she did it. He noticed she was channeling a strange white mana, moving it around. He's never seen anyone use that type of mana for healing. He's spotted white mana many times before, but it's incredibly difficult to control. He's never managed it himself. Normally, it only shows up when someone sacrifices themselves for another or does something selfless and kind. But those feelings are too far of reach for him. The girl just says it's nothing special. It's simply a healing spell. And what's this about white mana? Ray remembers Niles once told him he'd never heard of mana having colors. Normally, people just use magic without thinking about that. She repeats that she doesn't know what he's talking about, then asks if he means elemental generation. He asks her to explain. She says it's the process of combining multiple elements to create a spell. Healing magic, for example, is simple. You combine the regeneration element with 2 others if you want to make it stronger. Ray asks how many elements exist, and she says just the natural ones number over 20. If you add amplifiers, manipulators, and the rest, the total goes past 100. Finally, Ray feels like he's learned something useful since coming to this city. Now he's eager to meet her grandfather and learn more. He asks if he can speak with him, and she says yes, but he can't even get out of bed. He's too sick. She tells Ray to wait while she was upstairs to see if he's awake and able to talk. While she's gone, Ray wanders through the library, glancing at the books. From what he's learned in the city, owning a book is extremely expensive. Touching them with his dirty hands would only lower their value. That's when he remembers. The last time this kid even took a bath was when it poured rain ages ago, and he just stood outside in it. He doesn't care about his own stink, but maybe others do. Maybe the girl has a poor sense of smell, or maybe she just tolerated it out of politeness. He notices some other books, though they look more like records or newspapers. One of them is a study on elemental distribution across the sectors, and the reason for the expansion of the black rain. Next chapter, when she's coming down the stairs, she runs into an empty room. She thinks she took too long, but then Ray shows up right behind her, startling the girl. She tells him to stop popping out of nowhere like that. He just says he wants to know more about magic. He looked through books and didn't find anything. She's impressed that he can read as always and keeps thinking he's more interesting than she expected. The protagonist asks how her grandfather is doing, and she replies that, unfortunately, he won't be able to talk right now because he's sleeping like a log. Blushing, she asks him to come back tomorrow, and he says that's fine. But as he's leaving, she wants to know why he's so set on talking to her grandfather. It seemed like that was his goal from the very beginning. He turns around and answers that he's searching for the prism, which is actually that rainbow the old lady mentioned, right? But he figures it's the same thing anyway. 4:30 in the afternoon, and all I can think is that Niles is a liar. He told the protagonist that Sector 49 was all the same, but clearly everyone's living peacefully in some fancy place. Now Ray's watching another person from Philip's list of names. A man in his 30s or 40s who leaves at 7 and comes back at 7 in the evening. He always shows up with a basket full of fruit, and no one knows where it comes from. Even if these don't seem like big leads, Ray needs to dig up as much information as possible about this Joni. Turns out this kid is actually the one bringing him food. The moment Ray notices the name written on it, he says he never ordered any food. The boy insists it's on the house and already knows he must be Hunter, someone kids look up to like a hero. Once Ray realizes the boy has already figured him out, he decides it's time to ask something. Joni, all excited, even offers to hand over the warehouse password, which confuses Ray a bit, but his real question is about how accurate this man's daily routine really is. Johnny explains that he's not the man Ray's looking for, the one with the basket is, and that the schedules written down are spot on. That guy is so precise with his time that people practically use him like a clock. Suddenly, someone yells for Joni to get back to work, and the boy bolts off immediately. It was 6 in the evening, so just one more hour until the target appeared. Ray decides to eat and wait it out, but then his expression shifts when he glances to the side and spots the man with the hat arriving. Just like the monocle guy, he also had strange rings circling around his mana flow. In his mind, Ray thanks Joni for the food and slips away, heading toward where this man lives. He plans to take advantage of the time while the man's out to gather as much information as possible. Nervous, but with no way to back down, he feels an overwhelming surge of mana leaking out through the keyhole. He pushes the door open. Inside, though, it just looks like a regular home. He forces himself to stay focused. Now isn't the time to get distracted. The priority is collecting information about mages. In the trash, he finds a pile of crumpled papers. When he smooths one out, it's filled with scribbles and notes. One part mentions number 66, which he's been curious about. That instantly reminds him it's the same number of orphans Kendrick said someone was interested in. Ray starts thinking this man might be connected to that Merkard group the boy mentioned. But judging from the contents of the letter, this guy was actually kicked out of the organization. Then Ray feels something strange coming from a jar. When he opens it, he finds gems radiating mana. It's the same type of jewel in the ring Kendrick wears. It's mana from the air, but unlike natural mana, this kind gets drawn in much more smoothly. He wonders what would happen if he combined his own mana with something like this. At that moment, a flame bursts in his hand, the strongest he's ever created. Normally, it would take him more effort and more time, but this time it came so easily. Then footsteps echo down the stairs. He quickly clenches his fist, hiding the flame just as the man with the hat comes back in, grumbling that he can't believe he forgot his wallet, calling himself dumber every day. He mutters that this is why the organization abandoned him. Apparently, he talks to himself a lot, and then mentions to Walter not to worry. Once he finishes this job, he'll return to the group. As he climbs the stairs again, Ray thinks the man is leaving, but suddenly, the man halts and says he feels like he needs something else from this place. He turns, staring straight at the protagonist, and says he needs rat poison. Ray draws his knife as the man remarks that he knew someone was hiding there. He goes in for a slash, and damn, it looks like he actually landed it, because the guy had to fall back. He slammed his hand against the wall in frustration, demanding to know who Ray was, asking if he was that cursed assassin from the organization, and if they were underestimating him so much that they'd send a child. He had no idea how the kid even got the door open, but Ray just kept advancing on him. The protagonist's intention was clear. Defeat this man and force him to spill everything he knew since things had come to this point. But the guy blocked Ray's knife with his bare hand, telling him to stop thinking he could beat an adult with just a blade. Still, Ray pulled with all of his strength, and the man was taken aback by how strong the boy was. He stepped back again and realized this man had used that same strange mana Kendrick had used. It must have been what kept his hand from getting sliced. The guy then powered up, saying he had been going easy because Ray was just a kid. Now, though, charged forward, warning that Ray's face was about to be ripped apart. Ray, however, was more curious. If that spell the man just used, maybe he could use it too. Suddenly, the man launched another attack and blood sprayed. To everyone's shock, Ray had copied the spell. But his version seemed more natural, more in tune with the world itself. He had memorized the exact combination of colors the stone produced and repeated it perfectly. The man kept striking, demanding to know how this kid had pulled off metallization, a technique he himself had invented. He swung with a horizontal slash, but Ray ducked under it, dodged cleanly, and countered with a cut. Now bleeding, the man's knee was torn up and disbelief filled his eyes. He was certain of it now. This boy had been sent by the boss himself. Ray pinned him by the hand against the wall and told him he had to disguise his voice so nobody would figure out who he really was. But the man scoffed, white hair, gray eyes, everyone already knew his identity. Walter admitted he never imagined the infamous magic-stealing assassin would be so young. Ray, though, was only thinking about how hard it was to drag information out of people like this. Maybe the best option was simply to kill him right there. But then Walter declared he had no choice left. He was going to burn his own life away if that's what it took to kill the boy and prove his worth to the leader. Out of nowhere, he was engulfed by a massive pillar of flames, his body consumed by fire. He shouted for Ray to tell the boss that the Blood Eye would be paying a visit soon, assuming the kid survived this. At that moment, he promised the boss would regret ever abandoning someone like him. As he advanced, Ray noticed the mana rings circling his core were spinning at a dangerous speed. Mana was exploding through his veins, bursting from his blood vessels. It was getting lethal. The man raised his arms high, declaring that he knew Ray must be after the red bloodstone. But he wasn't going to let that happen, and he hurled a fireball straight at him. Ray brought both arms together, shaping a swirl of colors into a barrier, and somehow it held. The man was stunned that an assassin could summon a defensive spell of that caliber. Still, he kept hammering at it with more attacks, insisting that Ray's shield would break first. The problem for Ray was that he couldn't get close to someone whose entire body was engulfed in flames. He'd be burned alive. Suddenly, his eyes widened as the man raised his arm and summoned a colossal pillar of fire, daring Ray to block this one. Ray knew it was impossible to withstand that with just a barrier. But then the man noticed something odd, droplets of water forming all around him. He demanded to know how Ray was using two primary elements at the same time. Ray surged forward with a punch just as the man demanded an explanation for why an assassin was suddenly wielding water magic. At that moment, Ray unleashed a torrent and the man's flames were snuffed out completely. The next instant, Ray staggered outside. Exhausted, blood dripping from his nose, he had clearly pushed himself to his absolute limit. His mind was clouded, overwhelmed, but even then, he was left stunned at just how powerful that magic from those stones really was. The mana flowed calmly, everything blending together much faster. This thing was definitely powerful. He had no idea how strong it must be to have those rings around the circle. At this pace, it was more than clear he couldn't defeat that guy with a monocle, the one covered in rings with glowing spheres. Still, with enough time, he would grow stronger and uncover everything he needed. He figured something bad could happen, and that's why he stole a few of those little stones when he was hiding behind the door. The next morning, he arrived at Veronica's library. She was all smiles, welcoming him in while he carried that aura around. She immediately asked where his coat was, and he told her he got rid of it. After all, if he kept walking around in the same clothes he wore when he was attacked, it would only make him look more suspicious. Veronica then said she had spoken with her grandfather about how the boy had used magic to help everyone. And on top of that, she mentioned he was searching for the prism. The protagonist, however, noticed a couple of children peeking at him from one of the rooms. The door shut, and Veronica explained they were her siblings taken in by her grandfather from an orphanage. Their names were Molta and Jolfine. He asked if her grandfather had taken those kids in to teach them magic, and she grew a little flustered, wanting to know how he had figured that out already. He answered simply that there couldn't really be another reason. She added that she herself had learned magic from her grandfather. Somewhat awkwardly, she admitted she understood, and together they reached the door where her grandfather was waiting. She stepped inside first, introducing the boy as the one who had helped her. The old man was standing there, smoke swirling around him, and he told Veronica to leave the room for a moment. She did. And then the elder turned to Ray, saying he was deeply grateful. He had heard that Ray had helped Veronica deal with those children, something he himself should have done but hadn't been in the best condition to manage. Ray replied that it hadn't been difficult, though his attention was fixed on the 4 mana rings the man carried. Beyond that, he could sense emotions: anger, comfort, excitement, shame, indifference, regret. Too many at once for him to believe, and yet they didn't seem to be just drifting feelings. They looked like they were part of the man himself, not just a representation. Ray was still trying to process it all when the old man asked what exactly he was looking to discover. Ray answered that he had been searching for the mage. The man asked what exactly he was looking to discover. Ray answered that he had been searching for the mage. The elder mentioned that Veronica had told him Ray was a gifted boy. The protagonist said he had no idea if he was gifted or not, and then the old man asked if his name was Ray. He guessed Ray must be from somewhere outside this place. Ray stayed silent, and the man remarked that it must have been a long story. Then he proposed a deal. They would play a game, and the loser of each round would have to answer one question. Ray was caught off guard by the mana pulsing around them, and when the elder noticed his reaction, he said the boy's senses really were sharp. He asked if Ray could feel the mana flowing between them. Ray not only felt it, he could see it. The old man explained that each magic came from a different element, and their combinations created new ones. Between them right now was an element known as maintenance. It was something necessary to keep homeostasis stable without being shaken by outside forces. For clarity, homeostasis is the ability of an organism to keep its internal state balanced. Yes, I'm brilliant. I never needed Google to know that. Ray then asked about another element he noticed nearby, and the elder was surprised, not even sure if Ray could really sense both. Ray said yes, he was seeing it clearly, a shade of gray and another, darker gray right next to it. Different tones, which meant different elements. The old man burst into laughter like a madman. muttering to himself that he had never needed to go through hundreds of orphanages, because here was a boy who appeared before him able to instantly recognize the difference between maintenance and continuation. This is something most mages can achieve in their entire lifetime. But then the old man says fate is funny. He doesn't have much time left, and only now did he finally come across real talent. Ray wants to know the name of that other element, the one paired with maintenance. The old man laughs, saying it wouldn't be any fun if he just told him like that. Ray should win the game and find out for himself. He explains that it's simple. Right now, there's a sphere made of two elements between them. He wants Ray to try pulling that sphere toward himself. If Ray can draw it close, he wins. To make things easier, the old man even moves it a little closer to him. Ray thinks there must be some way to win, even though the old man is much stronger. He declares he's ready, and the elder signals the start. The moment Ray channels his mana, the little sphere shoots off in an instant and stops right in front of the old man. Ray is confused, realizing just how fast the old man really is. Then the elder calmly announces that he'll be asking the first question. He wants to know where the boy learned magic. It's Ray's turn to radiate that fierce aura, and he answers that he learned by himself, surprising the old man for the second time that day. Judging from his expression, Ray wonders if self-taught mages are really that rare. But once again, the elder repeats that if Ray wants answers, he has to win the game. Ray says fine, they'll just start the next round. At least he'll be learning magic directly from a Dumbledore-like teacher, right? This kid's about to level up, but judging from his dumbfounded look, you could tell he lost again. This time, the elder explains that the competition depends entirely on a person's ability to wield mana. The number of circles didn't matter. He's only thinking this to himself because he doesn't know that Ray is already aware of circles. The protagonist realizes that at this pace, he's giving away all his own information while gaining nothing. He's fallen right into the old man's trap. He needs a different approach. The elder extends the sphere again, declaring it's time for the next round. Both of them unleash their mana, the air around them turning intense. Suddenly, Ray flings his hand to the side and activates something. The elder immediately notices the shift, saying the boy changed tactics, and this time he actually wins. I don't know if he threw water or a gust of wind in the old man's face to make him blink, but Ray points out the elder never once said he wasn't allowed to distract him. So the elder tells him to go ahead and ask. Ray wants to know, what exactly is mana? The old man chuckles at such a basic question and explains mana is the most fundamental element of all things in the world. It's what they're made of. No one can see mana, and no one can touch it. But just like how thunder strikes or fire burns, people can observe its movement through secondary phenomena. And when you stop to think about it, he's right. You can't really touch fire. If you try, there's nothing solid there. Lightning is the same way. We're learning something here, folks. The old man continues, saying only a small portion of humans are born with the sensory ability to perceive mana. But feeling mana doesn't mean being able to use magic. That's because the talent to sense it and the talent to manipulate it are completely separate domains. Ray asks if by talent he's only referring to the ability to manipulate. The elder realizes that's a second question, but lets it slide, answering yes. Normally, talent means the ability to manipulate mana and combine it to create effects. Usually, that's what determines how strong a mage will become. In a sense, studying mana is really just a person learning about themselves. And that's why there's a saying that the waves of humans are always honest with themselves. The protagonist grows thoughtful, but with that, they move on to the next game. And this time, it looks like our boy is actually managing to pull the sphere, and the old man is the one looking shocked. The element of maintenance was considered one of the hardest to manipulate, and he was learning it in real time and had already gotten the hang of it. So, what's the next question? This time, our boy aims straight and asks about those circles mages have surrounding their mana hearts. The old man explains that those circles can be thought of as vessels containing mana. The mana in the air begins to gather and integrate automatically into the mage's heart. However, the way it's distributed, how it's stored, and which element is stored all depend on the mage themselves. The protagonist asks if this refinement makes mana easier to use compared to the mana present in the air. The old man says yes, but there's a more important reason behind it. Using mana from the air once in a while is fine, but doing it constantly causes something known as mana poisoning. These reactions appear right after a mage keeps drawing on raw mana too much. If you use too much joy mana, you'll end up laughing like an idiot. If you use too much sadness mana, you'll start crying. If you use too much red mana, you'll be consumed with rage. The problem is, these symptoms keep building up until they turn into a permanent mental illness. Oh, that instantly reminds me of that old lady back in the town he came from. Could it be that she developed something like that with one of the elements? Ray, however, remembers Kendrick, the way his personality shifted in an instant, and Ray notices that maybe Kendrick had never been affected by mana poisoning simply because he didn't have any emotions at all. So Ray asks the old man, what if someone could use the mana in the air without being poisoned? Wouldn't that be a huge advantage? The elder replies that it's a unique thought, but he's never known anyone like that. If such a person existed, they would be incomparable to other mages, since all the others are forced to refine air mana for safety. For that person, the amount of mana available would be infinite. The old man then asks if Ray has a dream. The protagonist checks if he means the kind you have when you sleep, but the elder shakes his head. He's talking about a goal in life, something he wants for the future. Ray says yes, he does have something he deeply desires. There's a certain person he has to kill, another he has to save, and on top of that, he still has this idea of resurrection in his head. Give it up already, you magical Killua. The elder says he's heard plenty of people talk about the first, but it's the first time he's hearing about the second. Then he makes an irresistible offer. He asks if Ray wants to learn from him. Ray can't wrap his head around why a four-circle mage would want to teach some orphan off the streets. He can't see the man's purpose. Could it be that he wants something from him? But before Ray can even voice the thought, the old man says he doesn't want anything. So the boy just says, all right then, that's that. We're good. At that, the old man smiles and tells Veronica to come in. She'd been lurking around out of curiosity. She tries to act all awkward, saying she definitely wasn't eavesdropping or anything, no way. The elder insists she come in and sit down, saying he knows exactly who she is. Then he asks why he brought her, Multa, and Jolfing together. She replies that it's to pass down his knowledge as a legacy. The old man nods and says that this is exactly the most important part. What they must pay attention to is the rainbow. Ray immediately sharpens his focus, and the elder says he's heard Ray has been looking for it. The rainbow, or the prism, is a story passed down for hundreds of generations. Thousands have sought it, hundreds of theories exist about it, but they all converge on a single answer. Whoever finds the rainbow will become something close to a god. So yeah, basically the One Piece of mages. Veronica then asks what a god even is. He explains that it's a being so powerful, it can impose anything it wants onto this world. And now Ray finally understands why the man with the monocle was also chasing after it. At that moment, Veronica says she wants to ask something when suddenly the window shatters and something comes flying straight at her face. But relax, our boy's already there, flaring up that aura. The shards of glass are suspended midair, and Veronica wonders if this is wind magic. Ray, however, is thinking about how he already took down that guy, sliced his arm, and left him useless so he wouldn't try anything again. But apparently, this wasn't that guy, it was people from some other gang. He sees the kids running off, and the old man says that once again Ray saved them. It should have been him doing that, but physically he was incapable. He then asks Veronica to take care of the boy, while Ray wonders if this is really right. For some reason, it felt strange seeing someone cry over such a small wound. Veronica had tears streaming down. Ray thinks to himself that he actually wishes he had a scar, something to honor enemies of the past. That would look way cooler. Then the old man tells Veronica to stop using magic before she's even created her circle. She says fine, she'll just clean the room, and Ray comments that these people have been throwing stones for quite some time, judging by what she said. The old man replies it's been over a month. It seems like someone ordered it. Apparently, there's a person making offers to buy this store. Ray asks if the old man doesn't want to sell, and he admits that was his original intention. But things are getting complicated. It was half a year ago when he opened this place. Back then, his health was much better. What happened to you since then? This was the place he built with the intent of training disciples and finishing his research. Veronica, all smiles, handed him flowers, congratulating him for creating the shop. And those kids next to her, they just looked so ordinary. It made me feel like they're doomed to die soon, just like those children on the bridge. The old man says life here was perfect. He could study and teach the kids about magic and the future. The only detail was that it was Veronica managing the store because of the illness he already had. The problem was if he died, things would only get worse. There was no way he could leave the shop to Veronica along with a few children to care for. He says he'll have to sell the place. But Veronica shouts no. He couldn't sell it. This was the place where his dream lived. He had wanted it since the very beginning of his life. The old man thanks her for caring, but says not everything in life happens the way we want. She insists that it doesn't matter. She wasn't going to close the shop. She didn't want to see him fade away. The old man gets emotional, hugging her warmly, apologizing for making her life so difficult. A little later, that black rain is falling again while the old man has gone to bed. Veronica explains that his illness, the eternal sleep, started 2 months ago. Each time he sleeps, the duration stretches longer and longer, until the day comes when he'll fall asleep and never wake again. Damn, that's terrifying. It had already progressed to the point where he couldn't stay awake for more than 2 or 3 hours a day, meaning his whole day had been just this interaction with Ray. She then asks the boy to come back tomorrow since usually her grandfather is awake in the morning. She hands him her rain cloak and says she'll see him then. Ray, all this time, hasn't said a word, but now he remembers the people on the bridge crying. Even if it was hard for him to understand others' feelings, he had gone through something similar himself. He turns back and tells her not to worry, that everything will work out. The girl is left speechless, and he leaves while she thanks him. Walking through the streets, though he wonders where those guys ended up. He knows the library is on 8th Street, and the one running that territory is some gang leader named Jeffers. The place is empty, so maybe they retreated again because of the black rain. Ray had been planning to deal with this guy soon, but now he'll need to adjust his plan. He runs thinking it might be best to talk with Philip to arrange a meeting with Jeffers. But suddenly, right at the entrance, he comes face to face with 4 hooded figures. That was Kendrick's gang, so what the hell were they doing there? The one on the right asked how long he was planning to keep this up, and the one on the left said the boss usually went on like this until morning. Right then, the protagonist saw Kendrick inside, furious. And damn, he was beating on Philip, who was lying on the floor while Kendrick yelled at him to stop being such an arrogant bastard, saying that just seeing him made him angry. Then suddenly, there was a loud noise. Kendrick turned to the door and there was Ray kicking it open, storming in after already knocking out everyone outside. Kendrick demanded to know what the kid was doing there and asked if he had come to negotiate with Philip too. But Philip was in no condition. Ray quickly noticed he had already lost consciousness. Ray had no obligation to stay loyal to him as some kind of business partner, but Philip had helped him in countless ways. And now he felt he had to protect him, because Ray always pays his debts. Kendrick, annoyed, said the boy was impatient. Their duel was supposed to be tomorrow, but if he wanted, they could settle it right now. Ray noticed how much Kendrick had changed in just a few days. His mana heart hadn't just grown, its color was also more defined than before. Things would get complicated if this guy kept getting stronger. Ray told him he wasn't there to fight. He had just heard a noise and came in. But he wanted to know why Kendrick had done this to Philip. Kendrick was surprised, realizing Ray must have also been negotiating with the boy. Probably he had received some shady offer, because that was all Philip was capable of, depending on stronger people just to survive. Then Kendrick lunged to land another punch on Philip, saying he was sick of looking at him. But the protagonist grabbed him by the chest and hurled him across the room. Kendrick, however, landed on his feet and immediately charged again, aiming a punch right at Ray's face. Ray calmly stepped forward and blocked it without any trouble. Kendrick shouted at him to back off, that this had nothing to do with him. Ray told him first he'd have to explain why he was doing this. Kendrick ripped his arm free and said he just couldn't stand seeing disgusting, weak people like Philip. The protagonist asked if he was really beating him up just because he was weak. Kendrick replied that he hated him, that just looking at him made him want to vomit. Ray said that wasn't a good enough reason. Kendrick punched the wall and ordered Ray to step aside, or else he'd end up the same as Philip. He swore he would show Ray what happens to anyone who invades his territory. Ray thought the best way out of this situation was to use that gem, but now that he knew about mana toxicity, he couldn't overuse it. Otherwise, he himself might lose control. So instead, he told Kendrick that if he really wanted to make an example out of someone, there was a better way. Kendrick said he wasn't here for games, but Ray explained that if he wanted people to learn a lesson, it had to be done in front of everyone. If it were him, he'd make sure the largest audience possible was watching. Kendrick, with his galaxy brain IQ of 17, actually stopped to think about it and admitted that it would work better. He agreed it wasn't a bad idea. Then right there, he told Ray to execute Philip during their duel in front of the strongest people in Sector 49. Kendrick agreed, but then asked, what if that bastard escaped? Ray told him not to worry, he'd take responsibility for Philip. Kendrick accepted that, warning Ray not to go back on his word. On his way out, Kendrick added one last threat. If Philip ran before the duel, he would come back here and kill everyone. As soon as the door closed, Ray rushed to help Philip, asking if he was okay, if he could talk. But the boy couldn't even open his eyes, his body was trembling all over. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, someone knocked on a door. A boy went to open it, wondering who would be showing up this late at night. He was startled when he saw it was Ray carrying Philip on his back, battered and broken, asking for help. Outside, the rain kept pouring, and a little later someone called out for Ray, saying Philip had woken up. The protagonist noted that he looked better than expected, and Philip, grateful, said he'd already heard from everyone that it was Ray who had brought him there. Ray simply answered that him being alive was enough. But then he wanted to know why Kendrick had attacked him so viciously. Philip explained it had been an unexpected situation. He'd been looking into the shops where they'd eventually send kids to work after Ray took control of everything. But while he was doing that research, he ran into Kendrick. Ray remarked that was pretty bold and asked why. Philip said it was obvious. There was a chance to make money, and he couldn't waste it. But Ray noticed that despite Philip's words sounding materialistic, his heart was glowing more pink than gold. And gold, in theory, was greed. So this kid clearly had some other reason for collecting money, something he wasn't talking about. Ray asked if he had known Kendrick for a long time, and Philip said yes. He wasn't hiding anything or doing anything wrong there. It was just that he and Kendrick had been friends since they were very young. They were two poor kids failing at life, living on the streets and stealing whatever they could. But somehow, after years and years of trying, they came across this hotel, and that was when they finally started to stabilize. Philip once asked Kendrick what he thought about it, if he liked it. But Kendrick, angry, snapped back, asking if they were rats and how long they planned to keep living in hiding like that. In that moment, Philip realized that for some reason, Kendrick never felt happy. In fact, it was like he was always angry. He was always obsessively training, working on his body. Then half a year ago, Kendrick left the hotel. After that, he began dominating the streets, throwing himself into countless fights like a madman. Ray thought he shouldn't have been winning just from training his body. He should have been getting beaten. Philip agreed. At first, the gap between him and the other kids controlling the area was huge. But then suddenly, things changed. Out of nowhere, he got really good at fighting. Or more precisely, he became strong enough that even when he fought poorly, he could still win. Ray then asked if Kendrick had always had that ring. Philip explained that he'd gotten it recently. Apparently, he wore it as proof that he defeated a gang leader. It was basically a war trophy. Ray pressed further, asking if he hadn't been this violent before. Philip was impressed at how much Ray already knew, but explained that yes, it was when he left the hotel that everything changed. Ray figured that probably that man with the hat had found Kendrick on the streets. The guy must have seen potential in him and given him that ring. He probably wandered around looking for people to hand those rings to. Philip kept talking about Kendrick, and Ray could see sadness and regret in his heart. So Ray asked him if he wouldn't like to talk to Kendrick and try to straighten things out. They were old friends, so why not try to wake him up to reality? Surprisingly, Philip looked hopeful and said he would do it. Risky though, considering the last time he saw Kendrick, he almost died. Ray told him he could come along to the fight. After it was over, he'd get the chance to speak to his old friend. But Philip shook his head and said that was impossible. He wasn't allowed into that area. Only people affiliated with one of the 3 gangs had the right to participate. Someone like him, just a kid running a small hotel, had no right to be there. Ray, however, told him not to worry. He'd already arranged it. Kendrick himself had agreed to bring Philip in. Philip thanks him, but Ray says he's going too far, because if he loses, the boy is going to be executed publicly with everyone watching. Right away, Philip wants to know, wait, what's this about being executed? Ray confirms it. Yes, that's exactly what it means. If he loses, his friend dies. Philip asks if he's joking, but Ray says he isn't. Philip nearly collapses. He was about to be executed, but the protagonist insists there's no way he'll die because there's no chance he'll lose to Kendrick. To him, this was the perfect setup. Not only would he take control of a lot, but he'd also have Philip indebted to him. Philip, encouraged, agrees to go along with it. The protagonist tells him it's a good decision, but then adds that there's also something else, a certain second condition. Next chapter, Philip shouts in disbelief, demanding to know if Ray is serious, saying no, he must be joking. But Ray challenges him, asking where that boldness of his to profit went. Didn't he say he would overcome fear? He's making a business offer here, and it's a great chance for Philip to profit big. Philip admits Ray isn't wrong. At these fights, the spectators would include the leaders of the other gangs, Jeffers and Lutzen. That meant all the money of the sector would be concentrated in one place. The problem was that even if Ray's plan worked, he wasn't sure they'd make it out alive. Ray reassures him that they only need to defeat Kendrick. Whoever else might be there wouldn't matter. Philip watches him, then goes to a drawer, pulls something out, and hands it over. The protagonist asks what it is, and Philip smiles, saying it would be an honor to take on this task, but before anything, they should draft a little contract. 2 days later in Sector 49, inside Kendrick's territory, was the day of the fight between the protagonist and Kendrick. They'd even stacked up barrels around the flames. Out of nowhere, there was a giant spider because, of course, in this story, everything is run by kids. The two of them stood facing each other as the announcer introduced Ray as the hunter of the 50, apparently there to challenge the leader. The crowd, however, shouted that it was impossible. Kendrick would definitely win. Bets started being placed, and naturally, almost everyone was putting their money on Kendrick, which was a problem for his backers because with odds like that, the payout would be tiny. Someone in the audience said only a fool would bet on the kid out there who had no chance of winning. Besides, they weren't even there to make money. They came to see the arrogant boy get beaten. In the arena, Ray observed the red aura of violence and the gold of greed swirling around. Kendrick wanted to know why he was alone. Where was the person from the promise? Had he ignored the warnings? Ray told him to relax, the boy would arrive in time. And right then, the doors opened with someone wheeling Philip in. The crowd was shocked, confused at the sight of him there, wondering if he was about to interfere. Kendrick, however, ordered them all to shut up and announced that he had invited Philip. After all, once his fight with Ray was over, Philip would be the next source of entertainment. The boy just smiled and exchanged a look with Ray, the two clearly sharing a plan. When Kendrick declared it was time to start the fight, Philip interrupted, saying to wait. He was there to place a bet, and he would put $2 million on Ray. That was what Ray had asked him for earlier, to bet every bit of money he had on him. Because Ray already knew everyone else would be betting on Kendrick. Philip hesitated, realizing that if he placed that much, people would get greedy and target him for his money. But they'd still take the bet. The crowd roared, shouting that now he'd said it, he had to put it down. And of course, they all wanted to dump their money on Kendrick to scoop up the massive payout. Philip covered his face with his hand, asking Ray if this had been his idea. Ray replied that he wasn't exactly wrong. The sidekick then says it's fine by him. If the boy wants to pull money like this, so be it. He orders the bell to be rung, and as soon as the signal goes off, Kendrick charges straight at Ray. Ray dodges the first punch, but notices Kendrick was faster than before. Still, he manages to grab his arm mid-movement, realizing he was still way slower compared to Humphrey. Ray decides to break the kid's arm on the very first move and goes in with a sharp elbow strike. But Kendrick seems to sense something, manages to slip free and backs off. Right then, he admits Ray fights better than he expected. He was actually a fun opponent. Since that was the case, they might as well fight with the intent to kill each other. Once again, Kendrick rushes at him, aiming a brutal kick to the head as Ray closes the distance. Ray ducks under the kick, tries to land a punch, but Kendrick dodges too. The crowd in the arena is impressed. Both were way better than they expected. Philip, watching, realizes that both of them kept advancing because flames surrounded the arena, and the first one to fall back would be burned. Kendrick screams for Ray to die and throws another vicious kick. But once more, Ray slips underneath. He knew wasting energy trading blows was pointless, so for now his goal was to put Kendrick on the ground. He managed to close in, grab Kendrick by the waist, but the boy stayed on his feet, snarling that Ray wasn't going to do whatever he pleased. Then Kendrick tried to grab hold, but Ray twisted, spun him around, and hurled him straight into the flames. The audience was confused, wondering if Kendrick had broken his bones. How was this skinny kid so strong? Everyone started whispering that Kendrick wasn't getting up. At this rate, he was going to lose. Then Kendrick slammed his fist into the floor and cursed them all. His mana flared and his heart grew even redder. He shouted that there was no way he could lose to trash like Ray and launched another attack. He swung a punch that cracked like a whip against the side of Ray's head. The protagonist realized every one of Kendrick's strikes carried insane power, and if this kept up, it wouldn't end well for either of them. He remembered what Niles had told him, that in a straight brawl, weight usually mattered most. And now, even with Ray summoning a barrier, Kendrick's sheer strength was making his defense useless. But Niles had also explained one way to overcome the weight difference: a joint lock. Classic jujitsu. Ray slipped forward, spun into a fast breakdance-like movement over Kendrick, locked onto his back and clamped a chokehold around his neck while wrapping his legs tight. Kendrick cursed him as a bastard, while Ray told him to just accept defeat. But Kendrick only grew more frenzied as his ring glowed an even deeper red. Then Ray noticed something was wrong. Kendrick stood up with Ray still clinging to him. At this rate, Kendrick was going to destroy himself, burning through his own body. Somehow, though, Ray flipped him over and slammed him down, yanking at his leg. The ring started to dim, and Ray ripped it off his hand. The crowd was completely bewildered. It looked like Kendrick had passed out. No way their leader had fallen like this. Then what was going to happen with all the money they bet? Ray was sure Kendrick wouldn't be moving for weeks. Damn, what did you do? Break his leg. At that moment, Philip rushed in, calling out to Ray, who was already scooping up Kendrick's betting money. Ray said he'd be holding onto it so nobody tried anything stupid. Philip realized then that Ray had been after the money from the very beginning. But suddenly, Kendrick staggered to his feet behind them, growling that it wasn't over. He wouldn't lose his money, and he wasn't weak, but he'd clearly taken a heavy blow to the head. The whole crowd turned on him, pelting him with trash, shouting that he was filthy and that they'd lost their money because he fought like garbage. Damn, the crowd tears into the kid too. And now, right, the boy who was just twitching out is losing his mind at the sight of it, screaming for them not to look at him like that. Without the ring burning anymore, he grabs a bucket, hurls it at everyone, and shouts for them all to go to hell. People are running, yelling that the place is about to go up in flames, while he laughs like a psychopath, saying only ashes will remain. The scene looks like it was drawn with stick figures, shadows fleeing while Kendrick stands in the middle, laughing like a madman, until he suddenly collapses on the ground like an idiot. At that moment, the protagonist realizes one of Kendrick's mana hearts has crumbled. He won't be able to move anymore. The problem is, if Ray tries to save him, they might both die. He's about to leave when he sees Philip stepping in to help the idiot. All right, his friend. Damn it, Philip. Just toss him into the flames and let him burn. But no, there he is, Philip, all 31 kilos of him, trying to save the guy who ruined everything for everyone. So now the protagonist asks if Philip is planning to put him back in the wheelchair. Philip replies that he thought Ray was leaving already. So what was he still doing there? Ray asks himself the same question, though he's more interested in why Philip, who nearly died at Kendrick's hands, is now trying to help him. Still, Philip, wobbling, begs Ray for help, and Ray, sighing, decides fine. He'll carry this idiot out. Now here's where it gets confusing. Philip tells Ray to take Kendrick instead. The protagonist asks, and you? Philip says Ray can just keep his share of the winnings since he knows carrying out 2 people would be too much. He's fine staying behind, which obviously makes it sound like he's ready to die there just because Ray can't carry them both. What nonsense. Kid, you're standing on your own 2 feet. You literally just helped someone else stand up. Put one foot in front of the other and walk out of here. Author, come on. I know I'm no great writer myself, but you could have at least broken Philip's leg if you wanted the drama to make sense. Him standing there saying this doesn't add up. Anyway, ran over. The protagonist remembers what Niles once told him, no boy, you have to see a better life. You have to help people. So he asks the idiot, are you going to stand there or are you leaving, dumbass? It's not worth risking your life to save Kendrick. You're good at calculations, aren't you? Then let's go. But Philip admits he didn't calculate things properly. He acted on impulse. He just wanted to save Kendrick. Kid, all you did was pick him up off the ground. That's your big save. Ray interprets this as being the same kind of situation he went through with the children from the orphanage that were wiped out by the golem. But honestly, the numbers don't compare. Back then, it was kids smiling, handing out donuts, and Niles laughing with them. Those poor kids ended up wiped out. Still, Ray thinks that maybe if he had pushed himself harder and given more to those people, he could have saved them all. Then he realizes, no matter how hard he tried, it wouldn't have been enough, which logically is true. Back in the arena, Philip asks if the protagonist will help him too. Ray says of course he will. Besides, they should stay in this section because it looks like the fire isn't spreading here. Suddenly, Ray rips off his shirt and says the biggest problem now is inhaling too much smoke. He starts using a spell, probably to purify the air. Philip, confused, stares, but Ray just tells him to cover his mouth with the shirt. Philip obeys, realizing this is why Ray seems so fascinated with magic. If he could create water, maybe they really could escape the flames. But Ray warns him, there's a limit to how much magic he can use. But now Ray wants Philip to answer what he thinks a friend really is. Of course, the boy wants to know why that even matters at a time like this. Ray explains that a friend is a friend. Everyone knows what a friend is, damn it. Philip pushes him, saying if he already knows, then he should define himself. Ray answers that a friend is someone you've known for a certain amount of time. Philip's expression shifts, and at that moment he understands why Ray always seems so strange to him. He replies that Ray isn't completely wrong, but something is missing. A true friend is someone who would help you without expecting anything in return, and you would do the same for them. That's what being a friend really means. Although, honestly, a friend is what she calls you right after turning you down. Ray then asks if Philip doesn't regret that at least 3 people died here now. Philip says he understands, but it's fine. He put himself in this position because he wanted to protect someone. Ray reflects on that when suddenly one of the massive steel beams comes crashing down on the 3 of them. For some reason in that moment, he's staring at it, thinking this time he's really going to die. That night, the only thought in his mind was killing that golem. But he doesn't even know why, since he couldn't bring anyone back after they were already dead. He wonders what the point of it all was, and finally he realizes the truth was that what he wanted was to keep living life alongside them. He raises what seems to be a barrier of wind, and the falling stones and beams are hurled to the sides. Ray realizes that what he wanted right then was the strength to protect them. Philip is baffled, wondering how just by lifting his arms, suddenly nothing hit them. He asks if that was magic, but even Ray doesn't know. He just tells Philip to stay still, and then he uses restoration magic on Philip's legs. He does the same on Kendrick's hand while Philip thanks him. The protagonist, though, is only doing this because he knows he'll need both of them to solve some problems later. On top of that, he wants to test the limits of white mana. Philip then asks what they're supposed to do now. The fire isn't going to stop. Ray says they'll get out, but Philip calls it madness. Did he have another spell up his sleeve? Ray answers no. All they have to do is wait until the fire has nothing left to burn, which basically means they're not leaving. They're just staying put. Outside, the NPCs are baffled. Their whole base was burning down in front of everyone. The donut eater in the group says it's Kendrick's fault for being a failure and setting everyone on fire. Looks like this was the mana of another gang. He waves goodbye, saying they can deal with this mess themselves. The kid keeps cursing at Jeffrey and Lotson. Everyone abandoned the group. Meanwhile, a few kids are crying too, probably the one who had brought Philip since he left him behind. But suddenly he stops crying. Through the smoke, something starts to emerge. All-Star busts through the wreckage, and the kid points, shouting that someone's coming out of there. It's Ray's silhouette, and right behind him are the other two. Obviously, they all survived. Out of nowhere, Ray already calls for a fight, saying that anyone who doesn't accept the result of the duel can settle it with him. The gang members, though, all drop to their knees, staring in confusion, and apparently now, everyone sees him as their leader. Personally, I prefer the multiverse where Kendrick had died, but fine. Back at Philip's hotel, the kids are staring, wondering who this crew is that just walked in. It's the two idiots together with our boy, who tells everyone to just wait there until they get their next orders. Philip asks Ray to wait a moment, then wonders if Kendrick isn't coming in. But Kendrick, almost in tears, says Philip abandoned him. How could he just walk back like nothing? Philip answers that it's fine because he would have done the same thing. The boy gets a little emotional, they hug, and a protagonist tells them to do whatever they want. With that, the two go inside. I'm trying to speed this up so we can move past this part and get back to something important. They take Kendrick to the infirmary, but no one's there. Ray hauls him over, throws him onto the bed, and tells him to screw off. Then he starts counting the stash of money they got from this war. Ray tells Philip he wants to rebuild the base that burned down. Philip says it'll be expensive, but Ray says just to use the money they'd taken. Still, Philip resists, arguing that he'd done most of the work and deserved his share. The protagonist finds it odd because Philip's mana glows gold, blue, and green. He asks if Philip's worried about him, but Philip says no. He knows Ray is the strongest in Sector 49. He just thinks splitting the money fairly is the right thing to do instead of Ray burning through all his own share to rebuild everything. Right then, one of the kids bursts in, saying the other gangs had shown up with their subordinates. Philip is shocked, but Ray is eager to deal with it. He knows these two gangs will just keep being a problem. He swings the door open, saying they'll get their share of the dividends right now. Outside, Lotson on the left says he thought they had died, and Jeffrey on the right, bald-headed, demands to know how they survived that fire. Of course, they were both there because they weren't happy that Ray's crew had walked away with all the betting money. They accused Philip of rigging the fight, cheating everyone, and that's why they were demanding the money back before things escalated into a brawl. Ray admits they're right. Some of the money did belong to them. He tosses them a single coin, saying that's all that was left of their bets. If they wanted the rest, they'd have to take it by force because that's how things work on the street. The bald one loses his patience. Ray immediately tells Philip to head back to the building work. The two leaders rush in to attack, even though Ray knows his body isn't in the best condition right now. But that doesn't matter, because in that instant, he slips his finger into the ring. Suddenly, power surges, his arm lashes out and shatters both their weapons. The two are left stunned, unable to understand what kind of monster they were fighting. Ray charges, grabs them both by the face and slams them into the ground. Aura-farmed. The kids in the background are trembling and Ray orders them to come at him, and they obey. I honestly thought they'd back off, but no, everyone advanced. Now the boy is finally starting to snap, going wild, finger on the ring, beating them all down. The people watching think it's insane. How was he fighting against so many alone? One of the gang members, now fully healed, shouts that Ray is incredible. Another quickly warns him not to say that. Their leader is Kendrick. But the first one shoots back. Kendrick was beaten to a pulp by this kid. Another voice rises, yelling that everyone needs to face reality. They were all sick of Kendrick doing whatever he wanted. Everyone had been beaten by him before, and seeing him crushed by the hunter was actually the best thing that could have happened. In the middle of this, the bald leader of the rival gang yells for everyone to split up, storm the hotel, and beat everyone inside. That shocks the protagonist. He knows he can't hold them all off, and in an instant, the kids are already bolting in panic. But then Ray pulls on red mana and shouts, ordering everyone to stop. The kids who used to obey Kendrick realize maybe that those orders were meant for them, so they jump in. The ones trying to storm the hotel don't understand why this is happening, but now they're the ones getting slapped around. What follows looks more like a daycare brawl where nobody's actually getting hurt, while Philip and the rest of the useless bunch upstairs just watch. I don't even know how many kids are in this place, but suddenly some of them drag out a giant sugarcane stalk like they're staging some kind of medieval invasion. What's going on here? Inside, the kids are panicking, shouting that lunatics are charging, and one swings down a hammer. Or not, Ray catches it mid-swing, declaring that today nobody is invading this hotel. Everyone is confused. 1 second the boy is standing still, and the next he vanishes, blocks the attack head-on, and is suddenly holding off multiple attackers at once. Then bracing with both hands, he throws them aside in a move like some ogre strike, and the kids go flying. Philip wonders how this is even possible, while Ray just stands there farming aura, glaring until everyone scatters. It was time to win by sheer intimidation, because his energy was running out. That's when the crowd bursts into cheers. Hunter, you're amazing. My God, you're incredible. Ray looks into their hearts, wondering what emotion this was. He had no clue. Then, exhausted, he collapses, murmuring that it wasn't so bad after all. Next chapter. Suddenly, he's in a manga. Everything is black and white now. He's wandering, not understanding what place this is. He starts climbing a mountain of trash, and at the top he finds a strange source of light. A bright white glow in a black and white world, oddly giving him a feeling of certainty. A certainty that this light was originally white, then cracks spread across it, and from within bursts a rainbow of colors. In the blink of an eye, he's standing in a field of countless colors, asking himself what this was. And right then, he wakes up in bed, not understanding where he is. He notices it's probably Philip's hotel and wonders what a strange dream that was. Two people open the door, asking if he's okay and already wanting to know if he wants something to eat. Ray is still confused. He doesn't even know what day it is. Turns out it's 6 in the evening the next day, meaning the boy had slept for 24 hours straight. Strangely enough, he gets up immediately, saying he's heading out. On the second floor, he sees everyone talking excitedly about rebuilding. He's certain Philip took care of assigning work to everyone. It even looks like Kendrick's gang was going to stay at the hotel. One of the boys from that gang steps forward, flexes his bicep, and says Ray can count on him if he needs help. He'll carry all those boxes wherever they need. Ray notices, though, that the boy's heart is heavy with guilt. As he heads down the stairs, everyone's cheering his name, shouting that Hunter is awake, clearly impressed. But then suddenly, a shout cuts through the noise. Someone orders him to freeze. It's Kendrick, running at him with a weapon in hand. Okay, I got carried away. It's just a scalpel. Ray tells him to stop, reminding him they'd already settled this. But Kendrick lunges anyway, aiming the blade at Ray's massive eye. Just before it connects, he freezes, trembling all over, muttering that he's going to kill the bastard. Ray asks him what his problem is. Then, grabbing Kendrick by the arm, he presses the blade to his own neck, saying, "Cut here." Ray's putting on a badass act because he can see Kendrick has no red mana at all. In other words, he doesn't actually have the intent or conviction to kill. Then Kendrick suddenly tries to turn the scalpel on himself, forcing Ray to activate his magic and stop the idiot from hurting himself. As if it weren't enough not to kill him, now he has to save the guy from himself. Dear God. In the next scene, Philip is apologizing, saying there shouldn't have been a blade inside the hotel, for God's sake. The protagonist says it's fine, nobody got hurt, while Kendrick stands there with his head down. Philip immediately wants to know if the fool really wants to die, but Kendrick says he's being serious. Now that he's lost the duel, everyone will believe he's weak. Everyone will laugh at him and humiliate him again. Wait, I don't get it. You really are weak, kid. You got beaten down, of course you're supposed to be humiliated, just like everybody else. Philip disagrees, but then he slams the table and asks how much he even knows. They don't know each other at all. That's when Ray notices once again that the kid's heart was glowing red. Just like always, his mana was being drained in an abnormal way. He remembers Veronica explaining about items that trigger mana like that, and how they can cause a kind of mana addiction or intoxication. Kendrick wants to know why he was saved. This time, things really were over. He says it would have been better if he had burned to death. Yeah, I agree with you, kid. But Philip says he saved him because they're friends. My God, no. I'm not your friend. I want to kill you. How can you call me a friend? I'm a bad person. No, Kendrick, we've been through a lot. I know life's been hard for us. We're going to be friends again. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Come on, take my hand. Then he pulls him in for a hug. Kendrick cries again while the protagonist just stares. He keeps talking, apologizing. I trained, but that guy caught me on the street, beat me down, so I started using the ring, for God's sake. Then another pitted guy showed up, found me beaten again. He gave me a hard look, made an ugly face, and handed me his ring too. Then I started lifting myself up, saw that I was way too strong. I was insanely happy. The guy told me that all I had to do is gather 66 losers. They'd deliver me to the elite group, and I become the best of the best. The protagonist reaches into his pocket, pulls something out, and says, "This ring here, is this what you want, you idiot?" He answers, "Damn, that's the one." And the protagonist shows just how clueless he is. He had actually been forced into using mana, something that exists in this world, but since he's not the protagonist, he has no idea how to actually use it. Crap, I'm worthless. That's what he keeps thinking with his hand on his face, crying while the protagonist tells him to calm down. He shows him the ring he liked to slip on his finger and says that if he follows the plan he has, he'll benefit way more. The fool thanks him and leaves the room, while Philip wants to know why he's even helping that idiot. The protagonist says he wants to settle everything here in 49 before moving on to the next places. Philip thanks him once again for taking care of his friend and says he really learned a lot from the boy. Ray says suppressing people through force is never a bad idea, and I agree, but it's not always the best option either. In this case, he just wants to leave things tidy in this sector in case he needs help in the future. Philip says that's fine, but the boy deserves to take the rewards. Then he tells everyone in the hotel that from now on this would be their hideout and Kendrick the idiot would be their lieutenant. Everyone knows he got beaten down so many times and now he's been tamed. And the protagonist, as if forgiving everyone wasn't enough, also decides to return all the money to everyone. Now everyone's wondering if he's even a hunter at all or an angel. Fine, whatever. I don't care that the protagonist gave the money back. He's here to learn magic. I just want him to leave this place already. With these kids nobody cares about. He goes over to the fat one and the skinny one, calls the two idiots, and warns them they'd better be careful with Veronica's shot. Right away, crack, first whip across the mouth. The guy tries to offer money, something like that, but gets hit again. When the skinny one sees the fat one taking a beating, just from having the gag pulled out of his mouth, the kid is already trembling all over. That's when he reveals they had received a request because apparently someone wanted to buy that area. He asks who it was, and the skinny one says it was some guy from 3rd Street who runs a shop called Fred. The protagonist says okay, then slams his head into the wall 3 or 4 more times, softening up his nose nicely. Meanwhile, everyone is standing there looking kind of confused. Man, the kid showed no mercy. Honestly, I wanted him to pull out a wind blade and slice both of their throats. I really did. He warns the two that if they try anything else, they'll be hunted down in this sector until they disappear. The boys are shaking all over, and with that, they're dragged away by the other fools. But it's nighttime now, time for the banquet. Everyone's going to eat. The protagonist is outside, all sad and quiet, remembering what Philip said, that he was a friend. Thinking about this whole thing of someone you do anything for without needing anything back, those kids under the bridge are the only ones he's actually cared about. Maybe Miles too could have been a friend, but he doesn't know if you can call someone 20 years older than your friend. He wonders if he'll ever be able to find someone like that again. After all, it's completely different, since most people around him either fear him or want to beat him. That's when Philip comes in, saying he brought some sweet tea for our boy, since he likes sweet things. Ray figures it's because he ate a bunch of chocolates, and when he tastes it, it really is warm and good. In that moment, he forgot about the emptiness in his heart. Finally, he waves goodbye to that damn Philip and heads toward the bookstore to learn magic with the old man, who's way cooler. Veronica greets him good morning and says she was worried. He hadn't shown up for several days. She and her grandfather had been waiting a long time. Her expression changes the second she sees our boy all bruised up. She wants to know if he's been fighting, but he says it's nothing serious. Still, she starts crying, saying there's no way he's fine when he's that beat up. Ray can only think that her mana circle was beautiful, like a gentle little sun. And he notices that before, he couldn't really see that feeling clearly. Maybe he's even improving his ability to see mana. Veronica is making a little mana ball to heal him, but he snatches it away and tells her it's fine, he already healed himself and she doesn't need to poison herself with mana because of him. She's a bit surprised that he knew, but he says it's fine. He just wants to go talk to her grandfather. As he climbs the stairs, he suddenly turns and asks out of nowhere if she considers him a friend. Poor girl is left kind of confused. Friend? Out of nowhere. What are you even talking about? Ray realizes maybe everyone has their own criteria for what counts as a friend. She's focusing hard, thinking that he's a savior who's already helped her twice. Besides that, she does feel a certain sense of affinity, though they haven't known each other for very long. The protagonist is standing there, waiting for her answer, and then she smiles and says yes, he was a friend. But he doesn't say anything, just walks upstairs saying he's going to see her grandfather. She calls after him, telling him to wait, and he asks what for. Obviously, she asks if he considers her a friend too. Of course, he shoots back a no. The poor girl is shocked, furious, and says she's going to beat him up. She yells at him to go upstairs, that she'll take care of her siblings, and that she doesn't want to see his face anymore. The protagonist is confused. Why is this crazy girl yelling at him like that? But he doesn't really care either. He just heads straight into the room to talk to the old man. And the first thing he says is that you're supposed to sleep less as you get older, but instead, he's been sleeping more and more. He's about to reach the point where soon enough he'll be sleeping the entire day. Yeah, while you could have been learning magic from a wizard who's about to die, you were out there beating up teenagers instead. Ray mentions that he heard the old man was sick and asks how much longer he has left. The old man finds it funny that Veronica told him and reveals he's got at most half a year. That's why the magic lessons will start today. Ray says fine, but first he wants to know what this item is. The old man takes a hard look and says it seems like a strengthening stone, but up close he explains it has a mix of amplification and extra power effects. On top of that, there was magic embedded inside it. But along with those activated bonuses, there was also a spell of exploitation mixed in. Ray has no idea what that means, so the old man explains the more you use a mana stone, the more it deteriorates until nothing's left but an empty shell. But this one was different. Each time the user tapped into it, it drained vitality to repair itself. Ray can't believe that's even possible, but the old man says it's actually pretty normal. The ring's energy source is mana, and human life force is also mana in a different form. The only catch is that this particular magic isn't something just anyone can pull off. So where did the boy get something so dangerous? The protagonist is an enemy of secrets, so he only says there was a guy with a hat in the city. He beat up the former gang leader, and apparently that guy had received the ring from someone named Mark Red. That name makes the old man tense. He says that's impossible. Those people are the most dangerous and influential organization in the underworld. They sell guns, drugs, even traffic humans. There's nothing they don't get involved in. On top of that, they've got fewer members than other organizations and keep their secrets way better. But the real reason they're dangerous has nothing to do with numbers. It's because every member of their guild is a mage. Ray asks if it's really that easy to find a mage like that. The old man says of course not. That scarlet gem is their symbol, and every member carries one. That already shows how little they care about becoming addicts to mana and other madness. Ray comments that the old man is pretty well informed. Well, he's old, he thinks. If you're 17 and already know some things, imagine him at 220. The old man answers that obviously he's informed. He spent his youth wandering everywhere searching for the rainbow. He shares a certain wisdom with all those who seek it. And one of the pieces of the rainbow, he says, is in Mark Red's possession. Confused, the protagonist asks if a rainbow isn't just that thing that appears in the sky. How could Mark Red have part of it? The old man explains the idea of the rainbow is that it's 7 colors appearing in the sky. But when he searched for it, there was a moment when he encountered Mark Red and saw the red gems they produced. It was strange because they were of extreme quality and many members carried them. How could they be getting so much energy of that kind? That's when he heard from some people that the rainbow was a kind of radiant gem carrying infinite mana. Ray asks for more details, and the old man tells him about an ancient land of incredible abundance. In the middle of human city, there once existed a gigantic gem that provided light and energy for the entire city. That light alone was capable of making crops fertile and curing any human disease. But of course, such a rare power was something many wanted to monopolize. And that's how a war broke out among humans. And in the end, the so-called rainbow was shattered into 7 fragments and scattered across the world. The protagonist understands that one of those pieces of the rainbow is in Mark Red's hands. The old man had wanted to study the magic that so many people talked about, but that organization has always been far too dangerous. Ray is sure that the guy he stole the stones from in Mark Red might be some kind of executive or just a random member. what he doesn't know yet. From now on, one of his goals is to really investigate those people. There has to be some lead about the rainbow, assuming they really do hold a piece of it. The old man already says he can tell the boy is about to throw himself into something extremely dangerous, but no matter what he says, nothing's going to stop him. The protagonist just nods, and the old man says he respects that resolve. He hands the ring back and says that's all he knows about Mark Red. What else was he trying to find out? Ray asks if it's possible to deactivate the negative magic inside the ring. Sometime later, Veronica walks in. The grandfather says that from now on, since they have a new student, they'll have to start from the basics. Veronica agrees, and the old man explains that the first lesson will be about forming a circle. Even though mages can use magic from the atmosphere, addiction to mana is a problem they have to learn to handle. On the other hand, when that same atmospheric mana passes through the circle, it becomes refined. The issue is that each person's circles work differently. That's why there's a restriction on which kinds of spells, elements, and magic each person can carry. The protagonist starts remembering everything he had seen before. With the old man, even though his feelings were complex, he actually only had a single white circle of light around him. He comments that the shape of a circle is simple, then asks Veronica to explain. She says okay, gathers mana in her hand, and explains that normally you start like this, drawing mana you're most familiar with. Then you focus that mana, place it over your heart, and make it circulate around your heart. You need to keep that movement as fast as possible, without stopping, until eventually, suddenly, the mana stabilizes on its own. But in her case, it shatters. She explains that she failed because she lost control before it could keep spinning automatically around her heart. I'm already excited for the protagonist to create several circles and have them spinning like crazy around his heart. The old man tells Veronica not to be sad, that she's been improving a lot. Meanwhile, she's all shy and blushing, saying she wanted to succeed so Ray could see how amazing she is. But now she's embarrassed. The grandfather then tells the protagonist to pay attention, and Ray says fine. He closes his eyes, and when he opens them, he sees the human world around him again. First, he needs to draw the mana he feels most familiar with, but for him, any of them are fine. He gathers it in his hand, places it around his heart, makes it start spinning, accelerates it, and suddenly there's wind blasting everywhere while he stays concentrated. Veronica is shocked, and the old man is half in disbelief. Ray feels like his body is about to explode. But even so, he knows he has to endure it, because if he wants to avenge the people from under the bridge, he has to become as strong as possible. Suddenly, he opens his eyes, wondering if the circle disappeared. But in his heart, he can feel something spinning around him. The bastard had made the circle on his first attempt, of course. Finally, something about magic instead of dealing with those kids. He can't believe it actually worked. Veronica takes his hand, says he's incredible, and asks how he managed to form a circle. The boy was a genius among geniuses. The old man is wondering how that's even possible. He himself had been considered a genius his whole life, yet it took him 3 months to form his first circle. He never imagined anyone could do it on the very first attempt. He really was far beyond. Beyond who? Nobody knows because he didn't finish the thought. Then the old man tells him that his circle contains strengthening, weakening, and regeneration. But of course, there were some other elements in there too. It's hard to understand, but it seems like the boy has several kinds of mana inside him. Red mana from anger, pink from sadness, white from worry, and many others that exist in this world. Ray asks how the old man can even see the mana in his heart, and he answers that he doesn't actually see anything. All he does is sense it. On top of that, if the boy doesn't want anyone to notice, all he has to do is stop the mana flow. The protagonist decides to try, makes a cut in the circle, and it looks like it works. That's when the old man explains that in daily life, it's always better to hide your magical circles. It's not worth it to walk around in this dangerous world broadcasting to everyone what kind of magic you understand. The moment you cast a spell, the circle is revealed, and whether someone notices it or not depends on distance. The old man is impressed with something else too. The boy had just created his first circle, but he didn't even look tired. So he tells him it's time for a test. They'll use some magic, and all Ray has to do is try to copy it. He closes his hands, and when he opens them, there's a complex structure there that looks like it's made of sand. Veronica thinks her grandfather has lost it. To make something like that, he had to use 7 different types of magic, not to mention all the formulas and calculations involved. Without any explanation, it should have been impossible. Yet Ray already has the same thing in his hand. The old man wants to see the boy's limits, so he tells him to make a little house, then a flower, then a statue. Now the old man is completely baffled. He knew the boy was promising, but this was far beyond what even a genius should be capable of. But after all that excitement, the old man goes to lie down. I'm already dreading the day he won't get back up. It's going to hurt. Outside, Veronica praises Ray, saying he was incredible. How could he do all that? The protagonist doesn't want to reveal to anyone that he can actually see mana, which makes copying much easier. So he just says he tried to do what the old man said, and it worked. Veronica realizes he won't tell her the truth, so she just leaves smiling, saying he was amazing. I can't shake the feeling that when she's alone, she'll cry to herself like, I'm useless. At that moment, the protagonist looks at her and asks if she's jealous. The girl is caught off guard and admits maybe she is, while wondering how the hell he can throw something like that right in her face. The protagonist wants to know if she hates him, if she's annoyed, or if she's angry. Or if maybe she's thinking she should have completed her own circle before he did. He asks all that because that's how people usually reacted whenever they saw any of his talent. She notices he won't stop until he gets an answer, so she starts thinking. She explains that she's impressed and wishes she could be like that, but isn't a negative feeling. Maybe it's because she's his friend. The protagonist, all twisted in his way of thinking, says maybe friends don't feel envy toward each other. She replies that it's not always like that, all while thinking that this idiot should just say outright that they're friends. After all, it doesn't make sense if only she thinks it's a friendship. It doesn't work that way. The protagonist remembers Pale sharing food with everyone and says he understands part of that feeling. Veronica notices that even though he had no expression on his face, he looked way too sad when he said it. So she turns away, saying he's way too weird of a kid. Bye. But the boy doesn't stop. He tells her to wait there and asks her to teach him how to read. The only words he knows are ball, dog, and house. She wonders if she can even do it. She's never taught before, and not even the kids help her much. Still, she gets excited and says she'll teach him. Since Ray saved her twice, she at least has to try. But there's something they absolutely have to do before starting their studies. The protagonist already imagines she's going to ask him to wipe out Jeffers' whole gang, which would be easy enough. Just say the word. But instead, she tells him to take a bath. Good lord, he got roasted. Turns out the kid really was a stinky mess. Next scene, he's walking out of the bath and she's all starry-eyed saying he looks way too handsome. Meanwhile, he just wants to know why she's staring. What? Can't you see some random color glowing in my heart or something, huh? She's got that thought in her head, and with that, the lessons are about to start. Obviously, his goal is to be able to read those books. After all, there are countless districts for him to keep climbing through, and in each one there will be different books he'll need to study to gain more knowledge. Veronica says he can count on her. They're not even opening the shop anyway, so she's always available to help the boy. He tells her the shop could technically start opening again though. Looks like those guys aren't coming back. Shocked, she reads the look on his face and asks if he killed them. But he says he's not cruel enough to kill someone just for throwing a rock at a window. Yeah, I guess I got carried away asking him to slaughter everyone. With that, lesson time begins. Books on the table. She starts explaining languages. This and that. He wants to know how long it'll take to study, and she says at most a month. He says fine, he'll give it his all. They start working on some math problems or something. She gives him exercises, but he breezes through them, says he's finished. I thought he'd get them all right, but she shows him he missed just one. At that pace, they might finish even faster than she thought. But then the class ends for the day, and she says she wants to ask him something. She wants him to watch while she tries to make a circle to see what she's doing wrong. He figures it won't help since he has no idea what he could even teach her, but she says it's fine. She just wants him to watch. If he happens to notice something, he can say it. If not, no problem. As payment for teaching him, he agrees and she thanks him. He then asks if he can read some books, and she says sure. So he starts with the dictionary. The little tough guy, huh? Wants to learn the words. Actually, he's just looking for one word, and that word is rainbow. What did you think it was going to be? She says she doubts he'll be there anyway, because the way he uses the term rainbow is tied to mage stuff. At that moment, he's already using magic to pull a little book into his hand and then several more. Damn, what was that? He notices it's been getting easier and easier to use his mana lately. He can't wait to get back to the carriage where no one's watching so he can test all kinds of things. Right now, inside his magic ring, there's red mana, light pink mana, and white mana. The light pink mana from the environment was tough and difficult to manipulate, but once refined in the ring, it became as easy as any other. He's eager to experiment more and more to learn new spells. What he doesn't realize is that the difficulty he feels with the light pink mana is because it represents sadness, something that after that tragedy, he developed a kind of aversion to. Sometime later, just like Veronica said, he finds nothing about the rainbow, but suddenly, he reads something that looks important and runs out, saying he's got something to do and he'll be back. At that moment, he's already leaving, saying now he knows what that guy with the hat was aiming for. Like any proper mage, what the man wanted was an offering, rituals where animals or people are sacrificed. And now it's clear why he wanted 66 children. All of it was somehow tied to that strengthening ring. And most likely, the magic of the ring was forcing Kendrick to push himself harder and harder to reach that number. That guy was just waiting for Kendrick to deliver the good news of success. All of a sudden, the protagonist is sitting in front of a banquet. He went to a restaurant, and now that he's famous in town, the kids are bringing him everything. Ah, this is that same shop where the guy with the hat always goes. One of the kids says he saw that man passing by and smiling, saying something about how the time is almost here. Ray decides he's going to have to deal with this. So off he goes, boldly heading back to the man's base again. Down there were clues connected to Mark Red, and he couldn't waste the chance to investigate. He isn't sure what the best option will be when suddenly a couple of guys come from the left. They're hiding under the stairs, talking about how they punched somebody, when Ray puts a hand on one of their shoulders. The guy spins around ready to throw an elbow, until he sees it's the protagonist and freezes in shock. Right away they turn friendly, asking how he's doing, what's the problem, and how they can help. Looks like what he wants is for them to warn him when the guy with the hat comes back home. That way he can slip out in time and not get trapped downstairs. They want to know what's in it for them. The protagonist says they can have a banquet at the shop, and instantly the fools agree. He heads down the stairs, goes to the lock, tries the same magic as before, but this time doesn't work. The padlock has been reinforced somehow. He knows that if he breaks it, the man will know someone was there. Right then, the kid shows up saying the man has arrived, and the protagonist has to get out. Nothing suspicious. He's standing right in front of the man's house with his arms crossed. The man walks up, stares at him, but Ray doesn't even glance back. The man passes by, and Ray's relieved he wasn't recognized and that he managed to pick up some useful information. Next evening, he's with Kendrick, who's shaking nervously, asking if he's sure about this. The protagonist tells him not to worry, just do what he said. And then the guy with the hat shows up at that very moment, staring right at the two of them. They bow, and Kendrick says it's been a long time since he last saw the boss. The man tells Kendrick to raise his head and cut out the formalities. He wants to know about that number of people, but before that, He wants to know who this kid is. Kendrick says he's a newcomer who recently got the title of vice leader. Thought it'd be good to introduce him, so he brought him along. The man tells the boy to raise his head and asks his name. Creative as always, the protagonist says his name is Niles. The man looks at him, then says fine, he should just work hard. The protagonist is glad it seems the bastard didn't recognize him from before. Inside, the man with the hat asks how many people they have. Kendrick says he's been working hard and managed to gather 63. The man says he doesn't want any weaklings, and Kendrick promises he's only picking the strong ones. Suddenly, the guy bursts out laughing like a maniac, saying Kendrick really is doing an amazing job. Once they reach 66, all they have to do is bring everyone to the organization. Kendrick, all excited, says he can't believe he'll be part of such an incredible group. The man with the hat tells him he's a lucky kid. Turns out his organization needs a new unit to train, and their group will be perfect. Kendrick thanks him, saying it's truly a blessing to meet the master, but deep down he already knows this bastard is lying straight to his face. Obviously, a guy with such shabby clothes and half-baked plans isn't some high-level executive. Even Kendrick is starting to realize how stupid he was to believe this guy just because he handed him a ring. The protagonist, though, says he wants to ask something. He's heard the group operates in different regions, so he wanted to know what sector and headquarters this guy belongs to. The man with the hat says he doesn't know where Ray heard that from. Mark Red doesn't have divisions. It's basically an organization with countless members working individually all over the place. Ray notices that the information is true since the man's mana circle stayed the same. And then the guy with the hat says their headquarters is actually down in 43. All their operations are supposedly planned there. Yeah, sure, you're trying to lie. But our boy catches it right away because the man's mana wavered. Ray just says fine, then asks what the boss looks like. The guy with the hat freezes, starts thinking about the boss, and trembles all over. He only mutters that the boss is someone incredible. Someone like him in the organization would never even have the courage to look in his direction. That's how terrifying and amazing he is. Ray can tell it's a mix of admiration and fear. The man then says he knows the kids are gathering there in 2 days and announces that he'll be coming to check on how things are going. And right then, Ray sees mana leaking from his hand and seeping into the ground. It wasn't much, but in a strange way, the guy had started forming a magic circle. Clearly, the whole place was going to be used for something. The man pulls some stones from his pocket, and Kendrick wants to know what they are. The guy says there's something incredible. The stones float into the air, and Kendrick asks Ray if this is okay. Ray tells him yes, nothing to worry about. The stones fly to different corners of the magic circle, which seems to solidify completely. The man tells them not to be afraid. It's just a ring with the same mana as Kendrick's ring. Then he orders them to watch over the place and make sure nobody causes trouble. He also warns Kendrick to guard the ring he received as if it were his very life and never lose it under any circumstances. Kendrick, wearing the ring, nods and says fine, he'll keep that in mind. Walter then leaves, saying he'll be back in 3 days. The door shuts and Kendrick collapses in shock, asking what that guy is planning. Ray answers that's exactly what they need to find out. But for now, Kendrick should head back to the hotel, because there's something Ray has to handle here. From above, Ray watches the magic circles, trying to figure out what they are. He decides to sketch everything down because he knows someone who might have an idea. The next day, of course, he shows the circle to the old man, who immediately asks if what was drawn had any connection to the Mark Red executive. Ray notices the old man caught on instantly and admits yes. The old man warns him to be careful because he's gotten involved with something truly dangerous. What Ray had seen was a magic circle, something that drastically amplifies the power of a spell. It's a difficult technique that only a handful of people can use, and the one Ray drew was a perfect magic circle. What surprises the old man is that the boy sketched it flawlessly without any training at all. That's because magic circles condense an absurd amount of mana into a tiny space. Because of that, trying to grasp each inscription through sensing mana is extremely difficult. But for our protagonist, it wasn't. He just drew it, since he can literally see mana. For the old man, this should have been impossible. It's like being able to understand the arrangement of ultra-fine lines. The only way someone could replicate something like that without prior knowledge would be if they could see it with their own eyes. So yeah, the clever kid is figuring everything out, and the protagonist wants to know what the circle is for. The old man says, just like with the ring, it's a magic of exploitation. Still, he's thinking to himself that this whole thing about seeing mana with his eyes makes no sense. He needs to come back to reality. The protagonist then asks if the circle is going to be used to strengthen the magic and expand its area of effect. And the old man says yes, most likely. When that magic is activated, something will happen to everyone involved. Or more likely, all living beings would die and their life force would be absorbed and converted into magical power. Right away, Ray makes the connection with that whole sacrifice thing. The 66 children and the magic circle. Those kids were all going to be used so that man could get more magic. But the old man explains that a human can't handle mana that concentrated. That's because mana created from the life force of living beings is extremely toxic. Basically, it's one of the easiest ways to get poisoned. That's why no one ever bothers refining items or stones with it. What they usually do instead is create a magical creature and feed it that type of mana. The protagonist asks if the stone in the ring could also be used for that. The old man replies that maybe, if that were the case, things would work differently. Poor Ray, he's left with even more questions than before. The old man wants to know what he plans to do. Ray thinks about it but doesn't say a word. And just like that, we jump 3 days ahead to the promised time. He's standing at the door when Walter arrives, wanting to know where Kendrick is. The protagonist answers that he's inside the warehouse giving orders to everyone, so he came to greet him instead. The man thanks him and says they can go in, but the 66 people better be there as promised. He already thanks them for the hard work. Yet when he opens the warehouse, it's completely empty. He's about to ask why no one is there when the protagonist is already coming at him from behind. At least Ray's strike is precise and sneaky, but of course the man defends himself. He immediately demands to know what the bastard thinks he's doing, but the protagonist isn't here to chat. He conjures a fireball instantly and launches it right at his face. The man is forced to retreat, barely dodging, and wonders who this brat even is. At that moment, the door slams shut. The protagonist pulls up his hood and says the boss gave the order to get rid of him. The man laughs like a lunatic, saying the assassin has returned. He realizes the boy found out the circle was going to activate at 3 in the afternoon, but for him, that's even better. Instead of tossing a bunch of useless kids into the ritual, he'll use Ray as the sacrifice. And with that, he lunges straight at the protagonist. Ray locks eyes with him, but the scene shifts to Philip, watching from a distance and saying he can't see anything. Kendrick insists there's no way Hunter would lose, but Philip quickly covers his mouth and tells him not to say things like that, because they're hiding all of this from Veronica. Turns out she's there too. Since she's a mage, it seems she could help somehow. He introduces himself to her, asks if she's worried about Ray, and she says no. He wants to know how she can't be, and she answers that Ray is the most talented person she's ever seen in her life. Meanwhile, the fight is brutal. Fireballs flying right at Ray, but he ducks low and slips to the side. The man's getting furious with this little rat and charges in for a physical strike, aiming straight for his face. Back and forth, strike after strike. Veronica insists she's certain he'll win. Philip notices that even as she says this, her hands are trembling. Maybe that was proof she really believed in him, even while so worried. In the fight, Ray's dagger snaps. The man mocks him, telling the assassin to give up. He comes in for another attack, but I swear, Ray uses magic to pull the metal of the dagger back together, reforging it right in his hand. That's next level stuff. With it, he even manages to deflect the man's attack and knock his weapon away. Walter realizes the kid used the element of maintenance, but that should have been impossible while handling so many elements at once. Then the protagonist strikes again, aiming straight for his neck, but the man pulls back just in time. The sleeve bastard had reinforced himself with a layer of steel too, sneering that the brat was nothing more than a rat. Ray realizes his dagger won't work that easily against a 2-circle opponent. Walter then asks if he's just trying to buy time until the magic circle activates. He says Ray doesn't need to worry, he won't let that happen. Suddenly, he starts shouting, conjuring fiery serpents slithering everywhere. One lunges to bite Ray, who dodges while Walter yells that it doesn't matter. Ray's going to die here in this warehouse. But the protagonist is slipping left and right, stepping lightly on the railing, darting aside, thinking he needs to find a way out of this. Walter's movements are locked up by the need to control his spell from long range. So Ray decides maybe the answer is to go on the offensive. He channels mana beneath his feet and launches himself forward. Walter laughs, saying it's ridiculous if Ray thinks he'll miss and end up struck by his own serpent. But Ray has other plans. He already knew it'd be hard to be a mage with more circles, which is why he talked to Veronica beforehand. He slams the ground, sketching a magic circle that erases the serpent and ruins Walter's spell. The clever kid had learned how to draw circles from Veronica, and now Walter is left drenched, scorched, and shaken. He can't understand. A circle from a level 1 mage shouldn't work like that. Ray just tells him to get ready and with full swagger, sends a water pillar crashing down on him. What's this? The kid is building an aura now. The whole place is swept clean, leaving only Walter, soaked and pathetic, in the center. 3 minutes remain before the circle is set to activate. Suddenly, Walter gets back up, saying he has to leave, that he needs to return to the boss. But Ray warns him to stay put, or that ring will be destroyed. Walter scoffs, saying it's irrelevant. Executives gain things far beyond what normal members do. Ray needs to stall for more time, he's already at his limit. Walter insists it's impossible, but Ray counters that if a certain combination of elements is placed into the ring, it can be weakened or even destroyed. That stresses Walter, who snaps that before leaving. He'll tear Ray's arms off. Ray shrugs and says fine, he can try. Then, out of nowhere, he tosses the ring away. Walter bolts one way, Ray dashes the other. By the time Walter retrieves it, Ray's already at the door with 2 more stones in hand. Goodbye. He shuts the place behind him. Walter thinks he just has to escape, since there are still 5 minutes left. But then suddenly, the circle activates. Something feels off. He should have had more time before it triggered. And that's when we see Ray had pulled a 300 IQ move. Veronica had explained that the time limit for accelerating a circle's activation by altering certain parts was 5 minutes. Of course, Ray had tinkered with it earlier, and now Walter is the one being consumed. Humiliated, left with nothing but clothes and that reinforced ring, and the cursed mana flaring above it. Ray walks out still carrying that swagger, taking the ring, giving a cold stare. Outside, Kendrick is already panicking, saying they need to recover Ray's body. Philip slaps him, telling Veronica everything's fine. But suddenly she rises, saying she feels a strange mana. Someone was entering a berserker state. The two of them don't understand what she's talking about. They don't know magic. They just see her running off and decide to follow. Then, all at once, she stops. They're confused. Ray's walking toward them, breathing out flames. But it isn't a good sign. Veronica recognizes it instantly as mana poisoning. She says Ray's in danger, and the 2 others instinctively brace themselves. Philip says if the leader's in danger, then they'll have to help the boy, and he charges forward. The kid was already getting beaten before, but now just a flick of Ray's hand sent him flying. And damn, Ray really looked ready to fry this poor kid. It would have been perfect. I mean, it would have been cruel. Philip didn't want him to die, but hey, if he went down with him, that's life. The protagonist was already forming a fireball to throw at him, but Veronica, standing nearby, managed to cast a barrier and broke it apart. She's the tough one here. She tells them the only way to end Ray's mana poisoning is either to extinguish his flames or knock him unconscious. Philip says he understands, grabs Kendrick, who had already fainted like the useless guy he is, and asks her to hold Ray off for 5 minutes. The protagonist keeps hurling fireballs, but then decides to form a massive spirit bomb-sized fireball. He throws it right at her and everyone else, and now they're all realizing they won't be able to withstand this one. Veronica sees it too. She knows she won't be able to block it, but through tears, she says all she wants is for him to feel safe. Next chapter, we cut back to right after the fight with Walter. Ray had been staring at the mana inside the ring. Strangely, it seemed to be growing in an extraordinary way. He was wondering how so much mana could be contained in that ring when suddenly something caught his attention. In the middle of the flames, he saw a boy screaming, begging not to be hit. At that moment, he realized he was seeing Walter's memories. The boy was on the ground, beaten to a pulp. Then he stood up, consumed with rage, saying he had to take revenge on everyone. From then on, vengeance ruled him and his mana was always fueled by anger. Ray seemed to be getting dragged into those same emotions, remembering everything that had happened, while a voice screamed in his ear to kill them all. A demon at his back whispered that he needed to slaughter everyone in front of him. That's when he hurled that massive firebomb at Veronica, who stood there with her hands clasped, praying and crying. But in that moment, he saw a strange white sun. He reached for it, and suddenly it was like he woke up from a trance, crying. Veronica was right there in front of him. Then the scene jumps forward 3 days. We're in the infirmary, and she's asking our boy for some water. He brings it to her. After taking the brunt of his attacks, she'd been bedridden for 2 days from mana intoxication. Because of that, she now makes him fetch books, take care of the library, and run all sorts of errands. So he's busy going back and forth for her. Sometime later, she asks if he was also affected by mana poisoning, and he says yes. For now, he's not going to reveal that it was because of the ring and the guy's sacrifice. She warns him to stop using unpurified mana, and that's when he finally reveals it. He said he willed it, but he pulls the ring out of his pocket. This brat's trying to troll us. He explains that the mana came from another person, and she says her grandfather had already warned her. Mana extracted from humans is extremely toxic and dangerous. He tells her not to worry, he won't use it. After all, if it weren't for Veronica, he would have burned not only everyone else but himself as well. She says thank goodness, and Ray takes the chance to thank her for saving him. But since Ray never thanks anyone, she assumes he's still under the influence of the mana. Then Philip appears, saying he needs to talk to the boy. In a box in the middle of the room are all of Walter's belongings that he had ordered collected. In an old photo from an orphanage, you can see the man with the hat, probably Walter, along with a bunch of kids and another guy in the back. The problem was the photo was old and everyone had their hair covering their faces, looking like a bunch of emo attackers. There was also a notebook of his. Inside were records of missions across different sectors. Sector 38, Sector 47, all marked as complete. He figured those were orders from Mark Red. And in Sector 31, the note said he had to investigate some kind of green gem. It looks like he didn't get any results. In Sector 48, he was supposed to investigate a blue gem, also nothing. Then a yellow gem, an orange one, and again, no results. He's certain now that these colored gems are fragments of the rainbow. And by the looks of it, not even Mark Red knows where the rest of them are. Philip, watching the protagonist, notices that he stumbled onto something important. So he says that since Ray is preparing to leave the sector, they've set aside some money to give him a little help. If he ever needs support, he can always come back. And when the date to leave is set, just let him know and he'll help him get out safely. Thinking about it, this boy went from 50 down to 49. At this pace, good grief, it's going to be 2,000 chapters. This is the new Marshall Peak. Philip is sad because he knows that once Ray leaves, he'll never see the boy again. Oh no, guys. To the sadness of many and the joy of a few weirdos, our boy invites Philip to leave the sector with him. I thought he was going to take Veronica, considering her grandfather, who's taking care of her, isn't going to live much longer. But Philip is shocked, asking if he's serious, and Ray says yes. His friend thinks it's crazy. He's never stepped outside 49, and he can't just abandon everything he built there. But Ray tells him he already knows the reason Philip's been saving up so much money. It's because he wants to leave this place. Apparently, he had spoken about it before. From what it looks like, Philip has a plan somewhere else. I don't know, since there are only images without dialogue. But it seems to be true, because in the end he says fine, he'll go with Ray. The only thing he asks for is a little time to prepare someone else to take over the hotel. All he needs are 2 weeks. Finally, the author learned what a time skip is. So everyone waves goodbye. Philip trains the others, our boy rides in the carriage, learns magic with the old man, chats with Veronica, who's impressed at how fast he's learning. He tells her she's a great teacher, while she thinks, no way, I barely know how to teach anything. And even now, the kids at the library still run away in fear whenever they see Ray, terrified of him. They're scared while he's around, but Veronica explains that once he leaves, they all get excited, wanting to know more about the Great Hunter. Then it's time to switch roles. Veronica starts practicing her circle while Ray observes. She's already much better at manipulating mana, even though he hasn't really taught her anything specific. The only advice he keeps giving is faster, faster, faster. That's all he can tell her. Veronica knows she still hasn't done enough. She needs to improve as quickly as possible, because soon her grandfather will die and maybe Ray won't stay by her side forever. She keeps pushing herself to speed up, saying she wants to live up to everyone's expectations. Then suddenly, both of them are surprised when Ray notices her mana circle, which had been empty before, start to fill. Unlike him though, she succeeds, but is left completely exhausted, with a pounding headache and her body trembling. Still, she's crying with gratitude, saying she only managed it because he was there. Ray, however, is confused. All he told her was to go faster, and that was it. My god. Top 10 saddest moments in the anime. She's thrilled, and Ray tells her to show it to her grandfather. I got this sinking feeling he's never going to wake up again, and I don't know why. She goes up the stairs and tells Ray to come with her. She wants to show her grandfather that everything she achieved was thanks to him. It'll be beautiful for them to show him together. Look at all this joy, all this sparkle. She knocks on the door, calls out that she's coming in all radiant, when suddenly she freezes. The protagonist asks what's wrong. And there it is, the window was open, and her grandfather was collapsed on the floor. Of course, this had to happen right when the girl was at her happiest. Sometime later, the old man wakes up, and the protagonist tells him he took his time this time, 2.5 days in total. The old man smiles and says he really doesn't have much time left. Seeing that there wasn't even a chair nearby, he figures Veronica didn't have the strength to watch him in his final moments. She always had a gentle soul and a light heart. Then he tells Ray he wants to express his gratitude. He forced the boy to learn magic so suddenly, and he knows it all came out of nowhere. Ray says that doesn't make sense, their interests aligned, and that's exactly why he came here. The old man just thinks to himself as always, what a strange child. He then says this will probably be the last lesson. No, Grandpa, don't say that. He asks Ray if he has any questions. Ray apparently decides to confess that he can't feel emotions. The liar shouting, crying, flailing, just putting on a show. The old man says he had suspected as much. Ray explains that in daily life there are very few things he actually feels. He doesn't know if maybe it's some kind of illness. The grandfather replies that a condition involving the heart can also be called an illness. Sometimes people shut themselves off after going through traumatic experiences. But since Ray seems calm about it, his case is probably different from most. Ray tries to think back on traumatic moments to some time when he could feel emotions, but he doesn't remember. He thinks he's always been like this. Then Ray asks what kind of magic his grandfather was using. It always felt like he understood Ray's intentions without him meaning to say anything, almost as if he had the power to read minds. The old man laughs, seeing Ray think that's magic. He explains that all he was doing was reading facial expressions. He tells him that whenever Ray understood some kind of magic circle or sequence, he would give a small smile at the corner of his lips. When he was confused about certain emotions, his eyes would sharpen a little. Right now, for example, he can tell by the way Ray is looking at him that he doesn't really understand what's being said. All of those are subtle signs, but they still show what he's feeling. He suggests Ray could try learning to read people's expressions too. Maybe that could become its own kind of magic he might eventually master. But Ray says he thinks it'll be very hard. Everyone's face just looks the same to him. After that, he goes down the stairs and sees Veronica sitting on a table. He calls out to her and tells her there isn't much time. Straight to the point, wasn't he? Veronica is afraid to see because she knows that once she does, it'll be real. This will be the last time. But Ray tells her this is her final chance to speak to her grandfather, and she won't ever get another. So she rushes past him, opens the door, and sees the two children crying. The old man calls out for her and celebrates that she finally came. Proud, she tells him she finally managed to build her magic circle. She holds his hands and says he once held her hand the same way and told her not to worry. He had said she wouldn't have to suffer from the cold anymore or go hungry. She had been so happy when he told her to move in with him. And now he didn't have to worry anymore because he had taught them all enough. The grandfather says he has no regrets. He knew how strong the children here were, and he was happy to have met them all. We cut to the funeral. Veronica even spent all the money she had to build a beautiful grave for the old man. With that, the children go to bed, and she closes the door. She thanks Ray, saying it would have been hard to carry him alone. The protagonist notices he still hasn't shed a tear, but her mana vessel looked like it was about to burst. He couldn't quite understand what expression that was supposed to be. He remembers his grandfather telling him to learn how to read people's expressions. He notices Veronica's mouth tightening, and beneath her hair sees her crying. When Ray finally understands what she's feeling strangely, he also starts crying and gets confused. He hadn't intended to feel any sadness. At that moment, Veronica collapses on the floor, sobbing, but our boy hugs her, remembering that Niles once did the same for him, and it made him feel better. Even if he didn't fully understand the emotion, he had a sincere desire to comfort her. The next chapter begins with Philip placing a hand on Kendrick's shoulder, who's crying, telling him he hopes he returns soon. The two of them get into the carriage. The protagonist glances in the mirror and comments that it seems they're not leaving today. He invited them, but wasn't sure if they'd really want to come. We then see a little earlier Veronica surprised, wanting to know what this business about leaving together was. And he had said yes, he wanted her to come with him and Philip. Considering she knew all the theory, even human circles, she'd be a huge help. On top of that, she carried that strange white sun, a kind of human he'd never seen in anyone else. Veronica replies that it's all too sudden. Besides, she has those two kids to take care of. He tells her not to worry, that Philip's hotel can look after them. She says she'd still be worried about the library. He tells her to just keep it closed for now, and Kendrick and the others from the group would watch over it so no one invades. He assures her nothing will happen, but if she doesn't want to come, then that's fine. She answers that obviously, but asks for some time to think. Back in the carriage, Philip says it's already 10 in the morning, and our boy shifts gears, saying it's time to head out. While Kendrick cries like a fool, suddenly Veronica appears, shouting for them to wait for her. She wants to come along. Philip says she must have been hiding behind a rock as she keeps yelling. He asks the protagonist if he's going to stop, and Ray, acting like he's in Fast and Furious, swings the door open and tells her to get in. She's teary-eyed, grabs his hand, and he pulls her inside. Philip, confused, asks why she waited until they were already speeding off to suddenly show up. She answers that she was scared. If she had gotten in earlier, she might have hesitated and wanted to back out. But now there was no turning back since they'd already left. Sometime later, though, both of them are throwing up, and the protagonist realizes the carriage has some problems. Apparently, they traveled 7 hours straight without a break, and the terrain was brutal. Since it was already night, they decide to stop. That's when Ray reveals his goal is to find the prism or the rainbow. Veronica knows what that is, but Philip is confused. The protagonist explains everything to Philip, also telling both of them about Mark Red. Philip says fine, then from now on, he'll help investigate those people too. Ray makes it clear, though, that the path he's taking will put all their lives at risk. Yeah, maybe he should have said that before they left the safe city. Still, he promises he'll protect both of them as much as possible in any situation. And of course, he'll help them reach their own goals too. But if they're afraid, they can always turn back. Ray says this, but he already sees both their hearts glowing yellow, the color of courage. Not only that, but it was the largest amount he ever seen. That's when Philip reveals his goal, to find his mother. It seems she abandoned him when he was little, intending to move to another sector to earn money. Her plan had been to leave, make money, then return and take him with her. But since then, she never came back. Philip is certain something happened to her, and that's why he was saving money, to go there and somehow find her. Veronica, moved to tears, says his story is so sad. So then Veronica reveals that her goal is to complete her grandfather's research. He'd been studying the black rain, why it caused skin discoloration, ruined soil, and brought all those diseases. It seems those diseases are incurable with current technology, and one of them is even eternal sleep. Philip says he'll do his best, and she agrees. The three of them promise to help one another in their separate goals. Philip reaches out his hand to Ray, saying from now on they can all count on each other. But Ray is too cold and calculating, seeing it as a meaningless gesture. Touching fists doesn't make the body or magic any stronger. Still, they keep their hands over the fire, insisting he join in. Come on, stop being difficult. Even though he thinks it's silly, he does it, and the two of them smile. But their smiles quickly fade when they realize this must be what Ray meant about risking their lives. They were being chased. No, worse, they were heading straight toward a herd of stone elk. Next chapter, they've already been traveling for 7 days. The protagonist corrects them, actually 9, and they've lost count. He tells them not to worry. It took 10 days to go from sector 50 to 49, so they should be close. That's when Philip looks to the side and sees a strange curtain of smoke. And as it nears, it becomes clear it's a stampede of stone elk charging straight at their carriage. Veronica says she's read about these creatures. They're pretty self-explanatory. A stone elk. Thanks for the clarification. What she finds strange is that, in theory, they're supposed to be gentle creatures, and it's not migration season. Ray is certain something must be happening behind them, since the elk are charging in this direction. He knows a head-on clash is impossible, so he tells Veronica to prepare a defense, and she proves useful, raising a barrier around the carriage. Ray then floors it, fast and furious style, plowing straight through the herd. The elk stomp onto the carriage, hammering their hooves against the barrier, while Veronica struggles to hold it up. But Ray sees it clearly won't last, so he calls out to Philip. It's time for him to learn how to drive the perfect chance. Ray jumps out, leaving poor Philip to dive for the reins, realizing the boy is insane. By then, Ray is already standing on top, staring into the horizon. Among the herd, he spots one with a blue color. And off in another direction, the ground is littered with dead elk soaked in blood. He orders Philip to head that way. But just then, the barrier begins to crack. Veronica's nose is bleeding, her mana almost drained. Ray realizes it was a mistake to force her to maintain the shield, since all she has is white mana. And now that the barrier shatters, there's only one thing left he can do. Philip yells at him to be careful as a beast charges in to crush him, when suddenly something explodes over the carriage. Veronica leans out the window to check, and Ray is still standing there, untouched. He had used metallization to turn both himself and the carriage into an unstoppable ball of steel. With that, Philip says the problem is solved. They just have to keep going straight. Sometime later, they stop again. Everyone is exhausted, drained, but the protagonist steps out and walks to where several elk corpses lie. Philip asks if they caused it, and Veronica says obviously not. These creatures have extremely tough hides. No carriage collision could pierce them like that. Ray agrees. The wounds look like bullet holes. The problem was the wounds were massive. Maybe some kind of special bullet? And right then, a man appears behind them, wanting to know what these kids are doing in the desert. He switches to a friendly face, asking where the adults are. He's sure the three of them aren't out here alone. Then he gives them another look, saying they got some pretty cute faces. Get out of here, Piketty. But the protagonist is pure Chad. He doesn't care. He just wants to know how far they are from Sector 48. The man starts to say something about heading home, but out of nowhere, Ray slams his head into the ground. Even Philip is left stunned, not sure what just happened. Ray hands him a dagger and says that when he gives the signal, Philip should slit the man's throat. Damn, the boy is decisive. Philip is trembling, dagger in hand. He's never held a weapon like this before, never killed anyone. But he refuses to be a burden. He'll do what Ray told him. Suddenly, he channels his inner Deep Wet video, warning them that if anyone moves, this guy's throat will gush open. The mercenaries are confused. Turns out these desert kids were tough after all. One of them narrows his eyes, tells the boy to let the man go, asking why they're starting a fight like this. He's about to say he's interested in helping when Ray gives the signal and Philip slashes. Unbelievable. He obeyed. These kids who were just playing house yesterday are now violent on the road. Ray warns that if they lie one more time, next time their throats really will be cut. The man wonders where the hell these devilish kids came from. Then he admits fine, they never had the purest intentions anyway. He signals weapons are drawn, and he warns that they're not outnumbered here. With a single word, everyone could be torn apart. But Ray glares back, posing like it's a thumbnail shot, telling him he wants to see them try. Flames hover inches from their faces, and with that, the mercenaries back down, apologizing, admitting it was a serious crime to mess with desert kids. Ray, completely indifferent back in the carriage, says he doesn't want this turning into a giant mess. All they need to do is answer a few questions, then leave. He asks what they're doing out here. The man in front says they're just searching for something to do with a blue stag with a stone on its head. Ray orders him to explain more. The man hesitates. He doesn't understand what mages are thinking these days, but finally agrees to explain. The client is an old man from Sector 40 who runs a spring, a man known as John Greed, with greed in his name, no less. Supposedly, in his youth, he traveled through these lands and saw the stag with a stone on its forehead. The creature descended from the skies, gave him water or something like that. The story sounds ridiculous, but that's what the old man claimed. Ray believes it since he can tell whether the man is lying and asks where this client can be found. The mercenary hesitates. He's not supposed to leak client information. Then he says the man is very hard to meet in person. But Ray stares him down, and when the mercenary mutters 42, the dagger slices his cheek. Ray warns him not to lie. The man is shaken. It feels like this boy always knows when he's lying. He's lived his whole life as a mercenary, usually able to talk his way out of anything. But this time, nothing works. Finally, he admits, Sector 48 at the Gallet Hotel. That's where the client can be found. The protagonist asks if they're behind the massive herd of stags. The man says no. These creatures normally travel in groups of 12. It would be impossible for a small band of humans to gather so many. Plus, they only arrived in Sector 48 a few days ago, and they're just as shocked as everyone else to see a herd that size. Ray says fine. He'll make one last request. The man breathes in relief, finally thinking he'll be able to leave. He asks the boy what he wants. The protagonist says that because of their little hunt, those beasts ended up crashing into their carriage, and now it's all wrecked. They need enough money to fix it. Before the man can even reply, Ray calls Philip over and tells him to state the price. A moment later, Philip smiles, saying that the robbery, no correction, the honest business transaction is finished, and he managed to squeeze out 250 shillings. He starts putting it away in the carriage, saying it all belongs to Ray. But the protagonist stops him, saying no, that's not how it works. They'll always split the money equally. Our boy is smart. He knows not being greedy is the best way to keep the group united. The others nod and accept it. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, a blue stag steps out from behind Veronica. They all want to know what's going on, and she looks nervous, unsure how to explain. She admits that when they got close to all those dead beasts, she spotted this one and quietly kept it hidden. She thought it would be too dangerous if those mercenaries notice, so she decided to keep it from everyone. Ray asks if she's really planning to bring it with them. She says yes. Fran would die alone if they abandoned him. He had no herd anymore, so of course he's coming with them. Philip is confused, asking how the beast already has a name and how she knows it's male. She says she's certain it's a male because he listens to her. Clearly, this girl is trained. Philip hesitates, then asks Ray if he thinks it's right to bring the creature along. The protagonist remembers how, when he climbed onto the carriage earlier, he saw that blue one that almost seemed like a familiar. It also lined up with the story those mercenaries told, so obviously they're taking it. The next day, they finally arrive in Sector 48. Fran is asleep in the carriage while the group walks through the streets, when suddenly, someone appears behind them. The city gang shows up, asking if they got a minute to chat, demanding to know who gave them permission to walk on this territory. One glare from Ray, and in the very next panel, the gang is already beaten down, muttering that their leader is Renard. Ray orders them to tell their leader to meet him at the Gallet Hotel on 22nd Street. He has business to settle. The gang runs off, panicked. Veronica sighs, saying this has already happened 6 times. She wishes they just stop bothering them. Philip pauses, thinking, and then seems to get an idea. Suddenly, the 3 of them are in new clothes. His thought, if they look like nobles, at least the street punks will stop picking fights. Out of nowhere, Ray's wearing a sharp suit, while Philip keeps his classic detective outfit. He thanks the vendor for the discount, while Ray wonders why they even got one. And so the 3 kids strut through the city, turning heads, but the protagonist notices purple envy glowing the hearts of countless people. He realizes it's just because of their outfits, pretending to be nobles. He asks Philip why that is, and whether there are other tools that can affect how people are perceived. Philip explains it's not just the clothes, but the style. Some people live ugly in fine clothes and ugly in plain ones too. Meanwhile, our protagonist is radiating pure protagonist aura, leaving nothing for the betas. Finally, they arrive at the enormous Gallet Hotel. Ray's ready to walk right in, but Philip stops him. First, they need to come up with a story that makes sense for all 3. They get to the entrance, and the guard gives them a look and a smirk. Just like that, they pass through without trouble. Philip turns to Ray, asking why he was so bold. He didn't say a single word, just walked straight in. Obviously, the kid checked the man's heart and saw there wasn't any hostility, so he knew it was safe to just keep walking straight in. I still find it crazy how different each sector is. By the time we get to Sector 1, it's gonna be like living in Olympus. No way it's not. And there goes Philip with his 416 IQ, walking up to the doorman and saying they're a little lost. They'd stayed in this hotel recently but forgot the room number. They came to visit their grandfather. The guy asks what their grandfather's name is, and Philip says it's Mr. John Greed. Just like that, the fool at reception reveals it's room 207. They thank him and head straight there. Now we're already at the door, knocking. A man opens, demanding to know what they're doing there and warning they're in the wrong place. Philip explains they found him through the Skyle mercenary group. The man's irritated, but admits maybe they could be of help. Turns out he's not John Greed. He says the representative is busy, and they can't waste time on a bunch of kids just because they feel like it. But Ray senses mana and can tell there are at least 4 more people inside that room. The man orders them to leave before they have to use force. Suddenly, Veronica feels a strange shift in the mana in the air. She looks to the side and sees Ray activating his spell, charging in for an attack. This boy has 0 self-control. But then someone inside says to stop. Another man steps out, welcoming the young ones, while Veronica shakes Ray, asking if he's lost his mind. The doorman then says that since the master gave permission, it's fine to let the children in, telling them to make themselves comfortable. Naturally, they immediately say they know about the animal he's been looking for. Next chapter shows that he's the water representative colonel, someone involved in water trade in Sector 40. Sitting down, John Greed starts explaining. In the past, the price of clean water was far more expensive than it is now. The poor couldn't even dream of drinking something decent. Ray asks if the water from the Elton River was already dirty back then. The man says yes, full of plastic, filth, and worse. Undrinkable. At the time when not many were left, they were nomads, people expelled from the sectors, forbidden to live in any of them. That's why they wandered the desert. When the first oasis they found dried up, they had to search for another. Obviously, with that kind of life, survival chances were slim. They were about to give up when John decided to go ahead alone, promising he'd find the next one first and then call for the others. His plan barely lasted a day. By nightfall, he was collapsed in the sand, starving. Then suddenly, a drop landed on his arm. Looking up, he saw a stag staring at him. Shocked, he watched as the creature descended, lifted its head, and everything began to shine. Suddenly, an oasis appeared before his eyes. It started to rain, and from that oasis, he built his water business. He worked hard trying to sell the water as cheaply as possible because he understood better than anyone the pain of not having anything to drink. To him, it feels like it all happened just yesterday. The problem now is that the spring has been drying up since that day. Most of the other sources that once yielded water have already been developed, and now greedier people are running the business. But he knows that's part of it. Everyone wants money. Families even turn knives on each other because of it. That's why he made the decision to leave the industry. His only wish is to see that stag once more before leaving this world, to thank it for everything it had given him. Funny thing is, his name is John Greed, but he's the kindest man around, and the protagonist says he'll help him. He was going to make sure John could see that stone stag one more time. John says he's already grateful just for the sentiment, but right now he's more interested in knowing who his visitors really are. Out of nowhere, the protagonist says they're mercenaries, leaving the other two a little confused. The men in the room almost burst out laughing when suddenly there's a knock at the door. It's that guy from the desert earlier, the one who got beaten down, saying he has something important to report. But the moment he sees the three of them there, man, his face drops. He apologizes immediately, admitting he was the one who leaked the location, trying to explain himself. John, however, says it's fine. He's sure the man must have had a good reason to reveal the truth. Then, since the kids had claimed to be mercenaries, he asks Skyle what he thinks. Was that true? John chuckles, saying it's funny how mercenaries nowadays dress like this and say such things. Skyle, though, is thinking the old man is a fool. He doesn't realize he's dealing with mages here. The protagonist realizes their clothes are now backfiring. Sure, they helped them get into the hotel, but nobody's going to believe mercenaries look this clean. So they ask if John Greed really thinks it's impossible for mercenaries to dress this way. John laughs, saying it's not impossible, but mercenaries always carry weapons and usually have special skills. That's when lightning suddenly crackles all around the room. Ray asks if this is the kind of weapon John was talking about. The guy in the purple cloak is thrown off, confused. A mage just walked in, so why didn't he sense a magic circle? He demands to know who Ray is. And Ray, noticing that this man is a two-circle mage, simply wants to know if that isn't proof enough that he deserves a like on this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.